Sports.
Off the wall. Grand slam.
This is magnificent.
Got a fantasy question? Email fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. Get ready to win your league.
Where fantasy becomes reality.
Now here's Frank, Scott, Chris, and Adam.
What's up, and welcome into another Fantasy Baseball Today live mock draft. This time, a 12-team head-to-head categories draft. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Chris Towers, who I believe really genuinely likes this format. What's going on, Chris? How you doing?
Yes, I think head-to-head categories is the most fun way to play fantasy baseball because you still get the head-to-head aspects that make fantasy fun, in my opinion. But also, I mean, look, fantasy's fun in any format, but the most fun when you get the head-to-head format. And you still have to balance your teams in the way that you would in a roto league. So I appreciate that. It is my favorite way to play fantasy baseball.
And I've noticed, Chris, we probably get the most email questions from head-to-head categories leagues, which actually kind of surprises me. So, hey, for those who asked those questions, that's why we're doing this draft today. We are joined by a very special guest as well, the lead voice for the Bleed Cubby Blue podcast, the co-host of the Cuppa Cubby Blue podcast. Actually, the first one, I believe, is just a website. The second one is a podcast. So we're off to a great start here. Previously, over at Fangraphs and Baseball Prospectus, it is Sara Sanchez. What's going on, Sarah? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So did I get those right? The lead voice for Bleed Cubby Blue, that's a website. And then the podcast is Cuppa Cubby Blue. I want to make sure I got that right in case we have any Cubs fans watching, participating in the draft that want to check out your work.
Yeah, that's right. The website is Bleed Cubby Blue. The podcast is Cuppa Cubby Blue. And every now and again, my writing appears in other places.
All right. But how do you feel about the White Sox? Just kidding.
Okay. So I'm actually from Utah originally, and I like the White Sox. I go to games on the South Side frequently. I know anathema in the city of Chicago, but I'm a huge fan of Eloy Jimenez, a huge fan of Yoan Moncada, big fan of Tim Anderson, love bat flips. So the White Sox are much better than the Cubs these days, and I just happen to like baseball. That said, head-to-head, got to go Cubs over White Sox all the time.
All right. I get it perfectly fine. And I'm a huge fan of Eloy Jimenez myself. Hopefully this is the season he could stay healthy and finally break out. Make sure to follow Sarah on Twitter at BCB_Sarah. Also, congrats on joining Tout Wars. I heard that you're in the same league as Chris, so shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about it.
Nice. Yeah, it's an awesome accomplishment. So again, congratulations.
Hey, I finished 4th last year. All right.
Chris, this is your year. I won Tout last year. Scott won the year before.
Yeah.
2022 is the year of the Towers.
I'm averaging, I saw some like all-time Tout Wars leaderboards, and I'm averaging a 4th place finish. I think that's pretty good.
That's pretty damn good indeed.
You know?
Before we get into the draft, make sure you like this video on YouTube. The goal today is 100 likes by the end of the draft. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We do a full-length podcast here live on the stream every Sunday through Thursday night, usually 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern time. And usually we do one of these mock drafts once per week as well. So lots of content coming out. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We really do appreciate it. Today's draft, again, a 12-team head-to-head categories league. Daily lineups, one of each infield position, 3 outfielders, 2 utility spots, 2 starting pitchers, 2 relief pitchers, and then just 4 pitcher spots, which you can make starting pitchers, you can make them relief pitchers. Of course, the head-to-head categories format, kind of the wild, wild west, a mixture of points and roto. So you could see some wacky strategies, but we'll have some fun. Chris has the 1st overall pick. Sarah has the 6th overall pick, and I have the 11th. Don't worry, Scott's not here today, but he is participating in the draft. He is drafting 3rd overall. So if he makes any terrible picks, I'll be sure to call him out, and I'm sure he'll be very upset with me the next time we speak. All right, Scott, if you are listening, watching this, we are good to go. You can start it up. I'll write it here in the chat as well. I should probably pull up the chat so that people can follow along, the draft rather. All right, we are good to go. And let's see. Chris, you're on the clock, buddy. Who are you going?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I was not prepared for this and wasn't expecting it. Gosh, there's a lot of different ways you can go. No, I'm not gonna draw it out. I think Fernando Tatis is the best player in fantasy right now, and I'm gonna go ahead and make him the number 1 pick. The injury concerns are what they are, but I almost think injury concerns matter less in a head-to-head league than a true roto league because, obviously the timing of injuries matters more in a head-to-head points league. If you lose Fernando Tatis for a month in April, that's bad, but it's not going to kill your season if he's there for the playoffs. So, I do think there's an argument to be made that one, the shallower rosters of this kind of format compared to Roto, and two, just the head-to-head weekly nature of it. Injury prone players or injury risk players, however you want to phrase it, you can make a case that they're a little less scary.
All right, so let's see how many Byron Buxtons, Adalberto Mondesi's Chris winds up with on his team today to go along with Fernando Tatis. Not that you need much more speed, Chris, because you're doing quite well. 42 homers.
Look, Adalberto Mondesi, Byron Buxton, Fernando Tatis, if they could get together and agree we're going to miss 1 month at the same time, that would be awesome. Then my team would be really good the rest of the other 5 months.
You're not wrong.
That's giving Mondesi a lot of credit.
Surely. Both him and Buxton. Look, as awesome as Buxton was last year, we'll talk about him once he gets drafted. After Fernando Tatis goes, we see our buddy RJ White take Trey Turner second overall. Scotty goes with Vladimir Guerrero. Phil Panepchek goes with Jose Ramirez fourth overall, getting that third base, which is, of course, one of the most scarce positions in fantasy this season. And then fifth overall, George Kurtz, who we had on this stream recently, takes Juan Soto. And Sarah, you, with the sixth overall pick, go with Garrett Cole. So a starting pitcher over a hitter. How do you feel about Garrett Cole this upcoming season? Obviously, kind of a weird one last year for Garrett Cole, going through all the sticky substance situations. But all in all, you look at the end result, and he was still one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, so my strategy was going to depend a little bit on who went before Cole in this, or who went before I picked in this draft. If Ramirez had been available still, if Vladito had been available still, I definitely would have taken one. I don't think Soto would ever fall this low, but if he had been available still, I would have taken him. However, without one of those top 5 hitters who I think are really head and shoulders above the rest, I'd rather take the best pitcher that I think is available, and Cole's at the top of my pitcher board.
Yep, makes perfect sense to me. I think he's at the top of most people's pitcher rankings this season, unless, of course, you think Jacob deGrom is going to stay healthy. Then there's an argument to be made there. After Garrett Cole goes, Bo Bichette, 7th overall, Ronald Acuna goes 8th, and then Shohei Ohtani, 9th overall, which is a steal. In this format, he is one player. These are daily lineups.
I always forget that.
You can reap the rewards of Ohtani as both a hitter and a pitcher. So typically in this format, Chris, I think you can make the argument that he should be a top 3 pick, maybe even the first overall player.
Yeah. I hadn't considered the full ramifications. We're talking about it in the chat right now as daily or weekly. And yeah, if you have Shohei Ohtani as one player on your roster, both hitter and pitcher, and you can set your lineups every day, then you're going to get 80% of his hitting performance and 100% of his pitching, most likely, in which case, based on last season, you're talking, I think it ended up being the games he didn't pitch. It was something like 33 home runs, 80 something RBI, 80 something. It was just a huge season in addition to whatever, 120 innings of really good pitcher performance too. It's, he might be the number 1 overall pick in this format.
All right, I am licking my lips because I wasn't able to do this the last time we did a head-to-head categories draft. I think I had one of the top 3 picks. I love to punt steals in this format. Steals are frustrating in fantasy baseball. And in this format, you can choose to punt a category. You can punt multiple categories. I choose to punt steals when I can. So with the 11th overall pick, I did have Kyle Tucker ranked ahead of Mike Trout. I think Tucker's probably going to give you 12 to 15 steals. I am actively looking to avoid the category. Give me all the 4 category contributors I can find. And so I start with Mike Trout and Freddie Freeman. Of course, they still chip in a few steals, whatever, 6 to 8, something like that. I'm not worried about steals in this format. I'm trying to load up on batting average, home runs, RBI, and runs scored. And I'm just going to keep trying to draft as many of those players as I possibly can. So ecstatic with being able to avoid steals with my first 2 picks here. After I took Mike Trout, we see Corbin Burns and Mookie Betts go at the wheel. I take Freddie Freeman and Rafael Devers off the board. Again, get one of those third basemen early if you can. and we'll see what else happens here. Chris, what do you think about the idea of punting steals in this format?
I think it's perfectly viable in this format, especially if you're playing 1 win per week as opposed to 10 individual matchups per week, because you can kind of get bogged down if you're punting in like too many 5-4 wins when you win, and then when you lose, maybe it's 6-3-1 or something like that, and then all of a sudden, even though you might win more weeks than you lose, you could end up with a 500 or worse record if you're really punting steals that way. So I prefer it if you only get 1 win per week or 1 game per week. But even outside of that, it's a perfectly viable strategy because you don't need to compete against everyone every week. You need to compete against 1 team every week. And so there are going to be some weeks where you're going against a team that's really strong in steals and you wouldn't have had a chance to compete otherwise, but that team probably has some weaknesses elsewhere that you can take advantage of. And there's going to be some weeks where the handful of guys who have 10 steal potential on your team just happen to go off that week and you manage to steal it, against some of the middling or lower end stolen base teams. So, that's the thing when you're talking about punting in a weekly league as opposed to a, season long roto format. If you finish in 12th place in steals, that's really bad. But if you're last in steals, you'll probably still win steals a handful of times.
Yeah, and punting steals, if you're actively targeting the other 4 categories, the other teams that are building out for balance, they're just, in theory, not going to have as much power as someone who is actively targeting those categories.
Or when they do have power, they have to find someone like Joey Gallo or the guys who can be a real drain on your batting average in particular.
All right, let's catch people up here. After Rafael Devers went 15th overall, we see Ozzie Albies, Luis Robert, Jacob deGrom, and Sarah, you wind up with Kyle Tucker, who I talked about was my highest ranked player at my pick, but because I'm looking to stay away from steals, I did not take Kyle Tucker. I think he's a borderline first-round player, and you get him here in the middle of the second round. How do you feel about it? The start here, Garrett Cole and Kyle Tucker.
I feel pretty good about it. I'm still looking to fill a couple of those infield positions that are scarce, and I care about them a lot. But Tucker, like you said, I think he's the best all-around player who was available. I've actually got him ranked quite a bit higher. I've got him going as a first-round pick, so it felt like I had to take him there in the middle of the second.
I love it. I absolutely love that pick. Kyle Tucker, 19th overall. Then we see our buddy George Kurtz take Walker Buehler, then Max Scherzer. Scotty gets his hands on Manny Machado, so he gets the corner infield connection to start. He gets Vlad and Manny Machado. So lots of power and batting average there for Scotty as well. All right, Scott, I'm watching you. I've got my eyes on you. Looks like we're going to be duking it out here for that 4 category production. RJ White takes Brandon Woodruff, and Chris, you are on the clock for 2.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out whether I want to just take 2 starting pitchers here and then just kind of not worry about the position for a while, or just go with what would normally be how I would approach this, which would be something like Starling Marte and Aaron Judge. I'm going to see what it looks like to go with 2 starting pitchers here. It's not my preferred approach. While Zach Wheeler actually was my second-ranked player remaining, Shane Bieber was more like 14th or 15th because I do have a big group of hitters ahead of him in this range. So going against how I normally draft just to see what it looks like, not sure exactly whether this is going to end up being a, modified Marmol strategy where I just have the 2 anchors and then try to get as many good relief pitchers as possible, or, if I really go heavy on starting pitcher. We'll see.
I really like that modified Marmol strategy call, Chris, because that's something I've done in the past and it's actually worked, right? So you get those 2 aces, you load up on some closers and relievers later on, get some guys that you just leave in your lineup that help you out with ratios like Devin Williams or Paul Sewald. And then you just take some high upside starting pitchers on your bench, and then you can stream those guys in the right matchup. So I really like that call. Why didn't you consider 1 starting pitcher and 1 hitter though? Are you just trying to like lean into this and try it out?
It's more just, when you're doing as many mock drafts as we are and as many leagues as we are, you want to, be able to tailor your approach to whatever the draft looks like. And so in this instance, it's mostly just let's see what this looks like. Let's see what it would look like if I did this, because I haven't done it yet in a draft. And, I think there's value in getting outside of your comfort zone as a drafter and seeing, if you can do something that looks good to you, even when it's not how you normally approach it.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's people in the fantasy industry that they kind of like scoff at mock drafts, but as long as everyone's taking the mock draft seriously, it's a good opportunity to try out new strategies and see what works for you and what doesn't. So yeah, I'm all about it. After Chris took Shane Bieber, we see Aaron Judge go. Scotty takes Cedric Mullins, so putting his money where his mouth is. I do appreciate that. We just did our outfield preview, and Scotty likes Cedric Mullins quite a bit. After Mullins goes, we see Julio Arias and Matt Olson go. Sarah, you are on the clock. Are you waffling here? Or do you know who you're going to pick?
No, I know my pick. I'm going to go, give me 1 second to get this on here so that I actually pick it instead of auto pick. I'm going to go with Starling Marte. I updated my draft software before I updated the board. Wasn't really planning on doing Tucker and Marte back to back, but I like the overall package of both of them. And I think that Marte stealing a lot with the A's was really interesting to me. So he's a solid all-around player as far as I can tell. I wanted Urias. I was hoping Julio Urias would drop to me, and he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, look, the fact that you have Garrett Cole, who's arguably the best pitcher in fantasy baseball and real life baseball right now as well, I think you can afford to wait on your SP2. So yeah, you got Kyle Tucker and you got Starling Marte. With those two combined, you're probably looking at 45 steals. I think that's probably a base. And obviously, if Marte could stay healthy, you're looking at more steals than that with him.
I mean, it could be 60.
It could be, right? Like he had 47 steals last year. He led baseball. He was absolutely ridiculous. So it's just a matter of staying on the field. And Chris, we've mentioned it recently. Famous last words. We have faith in the Mets lineup this upcoming season. Look, everything is there for this team. It's got to come together, right? They have Alonso, they have Marte, sign Mark Hanna, Eduardo Escobar, lengthening out the lineup a little bit there. Francisco Lindor, I'm expecting the bounce back, so I like it.
Yeah,
I like the Mets lineup this season.
The Tucker Marte combo, it should give you a really, really good base in batting average and stolen bases, which can be two of the hardest to find, and so that's really helpful. The one thing with Starling Marte that I'm interested to see is Citi Field is one of the worst parks in baseball for BABIP, and for right-handed hitters, it suppresses BABIP. I guess the average would be 100. They're at 96. The way that works, so that's not great. But Oakland Coliseum, or whatever that's called these days, is even worse. Yeah. So. Hopefully it won't be too big of an issue. The thing with Marte is he's older than you think, or older than you might think. But we've seen basically no decline in production really since his suspension for PED use. Another point in favor of the draft guys who were suspended for PED use in the past. So yeah, I think it's a good place to start. You're going to have to get some power if you start that way, but power is relatively easy to find.
Sure
yeah,
is.
A couple of years ago, I stopped worrying about home runs quite as much. And admittedly, that was the 2019 rabbit ball season, and we had all the ball shenanigans. But I'm not entirely sure what the baseball is going to look like. And so I've kind of stopped trusting MLB on that one.
Yeah, right. I mean, we talked about a couple, like last week, I think, about the idea of not fighting the previous war. And, not trying to win last year's league. And that's been even harder to do when the fundamental nature of the most important piece of equipment in the game seems to be changing every season, or, as appears to have been the case last season, from game to game. Right. It was just a different
field to field. Field to field.
So,
there are two different balls in play. One of them soars, one of them doesn't.
Yeah, so it's that makes it that's a real complicating factor.
All right, I'm frustrated because I wanted Sandy Alcantara, and this guy, Sean Snow, took him one pick ahead of me. So I was kind of tilting with my pick. I'll catch people up here, but not a happy camper. After Sarah took Starling Marte, we see Robbie Ray go, Austin Riley, Yordan Alvarez. Alvarez Sandy was like the dream, if I can make that happen. Just more 4-category production, and then you get my ace would have been my ace. But then Sandy goes one pick before me. I take Teoscar Hernandez, who, yes, will still chip in some steals, probably give you like 10 to 12, something like that. But, I mean, what I want him for is the 270 to 280, 30-plus homers, 100-plus RBI, which I think will be attainable once again in the Blue Jays lineup this upcoming season. So I snagged Teoscar. I now have 2 outfielders with my first 3 picks, which, look, in a league where you start 3 outfielders, it's probably not the best idea, but we'll figure it out as we go along. After I took Teoscar Hernandez, Paul Goldschmidt, and Liam Hendricks, so our first closer off the board, I took Aaron Nola. I needed an ace. I don't know. Arguably, Aaron Nola is an ace. We'll see what happens this season. Salvador Perez. I have a feeling that Sean Snow is solely just trying to troll me and Scott throughout the course of this draft. So we're gonna follow his team and see what happens, because he takes Salvador Perez in the 4th round, where everyone knows now that's Scott's strategy. If Salvador Perez is there in the 4th round, he's going to take him. So I'm watching you, Sean Snow.
I'm a little surprised Scott didn't take him in the 3rd, because he said that before. He said he would take him in the 3rd round.
Did he?
Scott took Cedric Mullins there.
Did he say 3rd? I'm pretty sure he said whenever he's available in the 4th round.
He said it in the 3rd.
Maybe in like a 15-team league, but I don't know. Third round of a 12-teamer. That's pretty early. After Salvador Perez goes, we see Wander Franco, Jose Altuve, who I guess we'll keep the pick of Jose Altuve. Pete Alonso. Sorry, Chris, you won't be getting Pete Alonso in this draft either.
That's a bummer.
And Sarah, you are back on the clock, and you select Xander Bogaerts. So let's check in on your team here and see what's going on. I believe you have two outfielders. You have a starting pitcher, and you have Bogaerts now. So yeah, it's Tucker, Marte, Bogaerts, and Garrett Cole. You opt to go with Bogaerts over another starting pitcher. Why was that?
I really wanted that power, and I wanted that shortstop covered. I don't want to be reaching for a shortstop later. I know it's a deep position, but I think there's a drop off in the tiers there, and I don't really want to mess around with like I love Javier Baez more than probably anybody on the planet, but once you get to that Javier Baez, Carlos Correa, Dansby Swanson line, you're looking at a very different. You're looking at a little bit different consistency from your shortstop than you get from a Xander Bogaerts. So I wanted my shortstop right there. And I feel good waiting one more round for another pitcher with Garrett Cole at the top.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. This is the range we usually see Xander Bogaerts go. So, yeah, consistently one of those top 40, top 50-ish players year in and year out. He's going to hit for a good batting average, probably give you 25-ish home runs, a few steals he'll chip in. The counting stats should be very good once again for Boston. I'm interested to see what moves Boston makes after the lockout. They've been linked to Seiya Suzuki, so I think that would be pretty fun, but we'll see. We'll see what the Red Sox got going on. After Bogaerts goes Freddie Peralta, 44th overall, then George Springer, Marcus Semien, Byron Buxton. Ooh, Chris, you're getting crushed here, buddy. I know you like Springer. I know you like Buxton. What do we do now? You're muted, Chris.
Hello. Springer Buxton would have been a good combo there.
Awesome.
So that's frustrating. Buxton was definitely at the top of my queue. Springer was next.
What's cool, Chris, is that you can play Tatis at shortstop or outfield. It really helps within the draft, because then if there's a shortstop you like more, you can pivot Tatis to outfield, and if there's an outfielder you like, you can kind of play it back and forth. So I like the versatility. It's pretty cool.
We'll cross that specific bridge when we get there, because here's what I'm doing. Ready to be shocked.
I'm ready. Ooh. Josh Hader.
Yep.
A second closer off the board. I don't know that I've ever seen you take a closer. Chris, we've done drafts where you don't even take a closer.
Yep.
Now you take one at the end of the 4th round.
Yeah, here's the difficult thing.
What do you do next?
I think I
see a few players that I like out there.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to see how it goes. I'm going to take Raisel Iglesias.
All right, so Chris is really leaning into this quasi Marmol strategy here. I believe it's a 25 innings pitched minimum for this specific mock draft. So you can't do a full-on Marmol strategy where you have all these relief pitchers and no starters. You have to have some starters in this league. And Chris has 2 great ones in Shane Bieber and Zach Wheeler. And then he goes back-to-back with Raisel Iglesias and Josh Hader, 2 of the top 3 closers in fantasy baseball.
Yeah, I'm trying to look. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So besides my picks, there have only been 14 pitchers drafted in the first 52 picks. And so that seems pretty light. 18 total in 52. So, to a certain extent, it's also just if pitchers are going to fall a little bit, then I guess, you can take a little bit more. That, I don't know if Iglesias and Hader, maybe you could call that a fall with where he's been going this year. And Iglesias, gosh, I think in an NFC draft that wouldn't be too high for him. Yeah, again, let's just see what happens. I usually do not go with the elite relievers. Raisel Iglesias 54.6 in your NFC drafts. So different format, but still. But yeah, I'm just seeing what happens. Let's see what happens now that I basically don't have to worry about pitching. In an ideal world, I should be with those four, with Zach Wheeler, Shane Bieber, Josh Hader, Raisel Iglesias, and 4 guys. I should be competitive to very good in pitching every week. So let's see what hitters I can get now.
All right. Yeah. 4 pitchers with his first 5 picks there. We'll see how the lineup shakes out for Chris. By the way, Raisel Iglesias, he actually finished ahead of Josh Hader last year in roto/categories formats. That's just how amazing he was. So you lock up basically 60 plus saves there for yourself, Chris. After you take Raisel Iglesias, we see Lucas Giolito lasting all the way to the 5th round. And I'm in a couple of drafts right now, some slow drafts, and Giolito's falling a little bit. We've got our pitcher previews coming up the next couple of days on the podcast. Giolito's going to be a fun one to talk about. After he goes, Scott takes Corey Seager. I believe Scott has 0 starting pitchers through his first 5 rounds. So
Again.
we'll check in on that. After Phil takes Ryan Presley, Edwin Diaz. So we're starting to see a lot of closers go. Sarah, you wind up with Chris Sale as your SP2. You have 2 pitchers now from the American League East. Chris Sale returned from Tommy John surgery last year, made about 8 or 9 starts. He mostly looked good in those starts. He didn't look exactly like the Chris Sale of old. Sarah, what are your expectations for Chris Sale this upcoming season?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that Chris Sale looked like vintage Chris Sale in those starts, but I also think that a full off season of rest and hopefully 4-week spring training ramp up will get him right back to where he wants to be. And I don't like Chris Sale as an SP1. I think he's got a lot of risk for an SP1, but I love him as an SP2. I love him as a guy who's going to rack up a bunch of strikeouts and he's going to throw a bunch of innings for the Red Sox. And I think he'll stay healthy. So I really like my pitching right now.
All right. Yeah, you've got Chris Sale and Garrett Cole. Reminder there for those watching. And then Ketel Marte goes. Ketel Marte would have fit the team pretty good. I like the batting average. Obviously, Chris, you love him. So we're talking about a near 300 hitter. If he could stay healthy, 20 to 25-ish home runs.
Yeah, all of a sudden everybody's taking my guys where I think they should be going rather than 30 picks later, which is pretty frustrating.
I mean, technically, Chris, that's the point of the podcast, right? Like,
yeah. So it's. I mean, that's sort of what I talked about with pitchers going a little cheaper. It's pushing some of the hitters up. And I think what you're also seeing is stolen bases are being pretty widely de-emphasized by this league. You've got still, at 59th overall, you've still got Whit Merrifield, Trevor Story, Tim Anderson, Francisco Lindor. So nobody's really making that plunge yet.
I've got a decision to make here too, because you're right, Chris. I mean, these are great values just in general for Whit Merrifield and Tim Anderson in particular. And I'm trying to punt steals. So I don't know. Do I back out of it? I
mean, the thing about you said Ketel Marte would have been a great pick.
Yeah,
I don't think Anderson's got Marte's power potential, but he's hit 310 or better 3 years in a row, 309 or better 3 years in a row. I think Tim Anderson's is, it's not a conventional batting title winning approach, but Tim Anderson, it works for him. He's really, really good. I think he's just about as safe a bet for batting average as anybody.
All right, so I went with Nolan Arenado. Tough for me to pass.
Not safe,
guys. Not safe at all.
Not a safe bet for batting average.
Spoke about him on the podcast the other day. Yeah, I'm expecting 250 to 260, but it's really the power that I want from him. And just to lock up some security at third base. Look, the position we talked about it a ton. It's not a good position. So if I get 250 to 260 with 30 plus homers from Arenado, I'm perfectly happy with that. I've got my eye on a player here. We'll see what else happens. Sean Snow, again, he takes Charlie Morton. So I'm telling you for sure, this guy is watching the draft, and he is trying to just troll me and Scott. And honestly, I'm kind of about it. I want to see how far he can go into like the troll Scott and Frank team that he can actually come up with here. All right, so Tim takes Trevor Story and Emmanuel Clase at the turn. Maybe I should have considered Emmanuel Clase more than I did, because he's probably the last of that elite closer group, I'd have to imagine. Scrolling down here. Yeah, geez, there's all right. I don't know who I'm going to get as a closer, but we'll take Lance Lynn for now. And I have 2 starting pitchers. They're not the flashiest. It's Aaron Nola. It's Lance Lynn. They're going to eat some innings. They should be able to provide you wins because they're going to go deep into their starts. Obviously, both teams have pretty strong run support as well. Not the best ratios, but some workhorses definitely going to provide some innings, provide some wins there as well. Lance Lynn and Aaron Nola to go along with my 4 hitters to this point. I don't love it. I'd be lying if I said I did. So it's fine. Castellanos and Eloy were the other 2 hitters I was looking at, and they fit the strategy, but I've already got 2 outfielders. So, that's the problem. You take too many outfielders early on, you handcuff yourself a little bit. I could have still done it. I mean, we've got some utility spots, but it was in the back.
Yeah, that's the thing in this format is with the 2 utility spots, it does free up a little bit of flexibility with those outfield spots.
Yeah. All right. So after I took Lance Lynn, we see again Nick Castellanos go, and then Adalberto Mondesi at pick 64 here in the 6th round, 12-team head-to-head categories league. Chris, do you think this is the right range? I mean, I know this is probably his best format technically, but 6th round, I think that's ahead of ADP for Mondesi.
Depends on what ADP.
Actually, it's right around ADP. Its ADP is 68 on Fantasy Pros, so this is the right range.
Yeah, and it's 58.7 in NFC drafts. And obviously, that's a league where people are a format where people are playing for an overall top prize, and so Mondesi, if he plays a full season, is going to be hugely valuable. But yeah, I mean, any format that gives you specific value for stolen bases as a standalone stat, Mondesi has the potential to be, I mean, not just the best in baseball, but as good as the next 2 best. Like, he played pretty much every game in 2020, and he had more stolen bases than 14 different teams. So it's the degree to which he stands out. It's hard to overstate. I don't know if there's another comp in the game. It would be like a closer getting 70 saves when everybody else is getting 35, like that. That's the kind of advantage he can give you. However, that advantage in a head-to-head categories league rather than the roto, I think is a little muted just because, you don't need the huge volume to stand out in a head-to-head categories league as opposed to a roto league where, winning steals can be a pretty big deal.
All right, after Adalberto Mondesi goes, we see Jack Flaherty, Eloy Jimenez, love the pick. And Sarah, you take JT Realmuto, who I believe is all right, Will Smith is gone too. So the second catcher, all right, Will Smith just went after him. So the second catcher off the board for JT Realmuto. A little bit of a down year last year for him, but when he's right, I mean, you're looking at 20-plus homers and double-digit steals. He also should be helped out by the fact that the universal DH will now be in the National League. So, we can get JT Realmuto some more plate appearances as a DH. What are you expecting from Realmuto this season?
Yeah, I like that about Realmuto. The other thing is that I love what Sal Perez did last year. I think there are a couple of catchers who have the potential to put together a season that's probably not as good as Sal Perez. But I think Realmuto is one of them. I think that he is all around still one of the best catchers in the game. I don't like having to worry about that spot at all. I also think that the Phillies offense is going to be better next year than it was in 2021. I think they've got a lot of hitters. They've got a lot of people around them. There's a lot of RBI opportunities in that lineup. And like you were saying with the DH, I like a lot of the NL catchers more this year than I did last year, because a guy like JT Realmuto, a guy like Wilson Contreras, when they're off, they're going to still be in the lineup because they're still one of the best 9 hitters on that team.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we just saw Will Smith go right after him too. So another National League catcher there who I don't think the Dodgers are as deep as they've been in years past. So I think he could definitely get some playing time at DH as well. Let's catch people up. Whit Merrifield finally goes off the board. It's a great value at 68th overall. Scott gets his first starting pitcher in Max Fried. We see Alex Bregman go. And Chris, you double tap the White Sox here. Tim Anderson and Jose Abreu. Just phenomenal value on Tim Anderson. And then Jose Abreu is Mr. Reliable.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where I think Jose Abreu may fall short. Batting average potentially, runs probably. I think Tim Anderson will be excellent and so I think they counter each other really well. Abreu, one of the most consistent sources of batting or of runs batted in of anybody in baseball, even when he has a down year. He didn't lead the AL in RBI last season, but he came very close. And obviously he led the American League in RBI the year before. He is one of those guys who just hits better with runners on base. It's been consistent throughout his career. And so that is, with Fernando Tatis and Tim Anderson, maybe it's not the best base for RBI yet, but I think with Jose Abreu there, it gives me a very solid combination of all 5 categories so far.
Yeah, I think that is a skill too, being able to hit with runners, not just on base, but in scoring position. And Jose Abreu is consistently good at it. And since he has joined Major League Baseball back in 2014, he has the second most RBI during that time, behind only Nolan Arenado. So consistently over that mark. He's done it in he's gone 100 plus RBI in 6 of his 7 full seasons as a professional here. After you took Jose Abreu, we see Francisco Lindor, who look, I think he's a great value there at 74th overall. Scott grabs his second starting pitcher in Frankie Montas. And then we see Logan Webb go 76th overall as well. Let's check in on your team, Sarah, see how it's going here. I know you have 2 starting pitchers in Chris Sale and Garrett Cole. You have 2 outfielders, Starling Marte and Kyle Tucker. You have Xander Bogaerts. You have JT Realmuto. You have a great all-around team. Maybe we're looking for a little bit of power here. Talk us through it. You're up next here on the clock.
Yeah, I am interested in a little bit of power. I'm also keeping an eye on a couple of places where I just don't want to fall too far behind. Keeping an eye on saves, keeping an eye on some infield positions. And we're about to see where that goes. JD Martinez was not in my queue, so that doesn't impact me very much at all. This is probably going to look like a homer pick, but I swear to God it isn't.
Uh-oh. What are we going to do?
It's Frank Schwindel.
It's Frankie two picks. No, not yet. By the way, during this time while we wait for the pick from Sarah, please like the video. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up. If you're watching us live, we have 116 people watching. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for coming to hang out here on your Tuesday night. We have only 22 likes, 115 people watching, 22 likes. Those things do not add up. Let's get to 100 likes by the end of this draft. So we're looking at, about probably an hour and a half, 2-hour draft here. So we've got some time to make up some ground, but please help us out. If you're here watching us live, hit that like button, smash the thumbs up, and that'll help us out so that other people can find the video, find the channel, and overall just help grow the Fantasy Baseball Today community. All right. So the pick is, all right, you kind of threw us off here with a little bit of curveball because it's not a Cub, but a former Cub in Chris Bryant. So you get yourself a third baseman, and he kind of fits the theme that you've been going for throughout your draft, which is just all-around production. I don't know that he excels in any one category, but you're talking about a 265, 25 homer, 8 to 10 steal hitter, which is very valuable.
Well, I feel like I've already got a pretty solid batting average base, and he's going to give me 20 to, I think high, like maybe 28 home runs. I don't know where he's going to play yet, which is a little bit of a challenge, but I should want to leave third base sitting out there any longer. It doesn't look pretty. And with Bregman and Nolan Arenado was on my radar earlier. With Nolan Arenado and Bregman both going, I wanted my next guy in my third base tier. So it's KB.
All right. After you took Chris Bryant, we see Jose Barrios and Tyler O'Neill go off the board. And I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I need a second baseman. I need a shortstop. I've got 2 outfielders. I've got 2 starting pitchers. All right. Luis Castillo goes off the board. All right. These are the second basemen available. It's kind of an interesting group. Shortstop. Let's see how we're doing over here. A lot of the same names. Joe Musgrove. All right, Sean. I mean, one of my former loves.
He did also say earlier that if Ketel Marte had been there at his last pick, he would have taken him. So it's not just you and Scott. You just happen to be closer to him in the draft.
All right. Yeah, it's the troll FBT team. So he's trying to snag some of your guys too. At least he's listening. I appreciate it, Sean. All right. So some starting pitchers here. What do the closers look like? I got to scroll down a little bit. Man, there's none left. Scott's
taking a hit. Yeah.
Chris took them all. Jeez. All right. So I am going to take Carlos Correa. No steals whatsoever. I'm expecting a 275, 280 plus batting average, 25-ish home runs. Not sure where he's going to play, but I think if he stays healthy and hits the way that I know he could, the counting stats should be really good regardless of where he plays. So take Carlos Correa there. Sarah, we were actually talking beforehand. Your Cubs have been linked to Carlos Correa. Do you think that that's a possibility?
So rumor is that the Cubs don't want to go 10 years, and I can't imagine that Correa's new agent, Scott Boras, is looking for anything less than a decade-long deal for his premier client. So I'm not optimistic about it, but I will say that the Stroman deal, if you look at the Cubs rotation, you've got Kyle Hendricks, you've got Mark Stroman, you've got Wade Miley, you've got Alec Mills. It is a lot of guys looking for ground ball contact, and the Cubs do not currently have a shortstop. So I think they need a shortstop. I don't know. I think they might get priced out of Correa. They may be in on Story, but I just don't think that you can run out that starting rotation with like Nico Horner or Nick Madrigal playing short. Like, I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Either way, they're going to make a move. It's just, do you want to make that move? It's ideally, I don't think anybody wants to give Carlos Correa a 10-year contract, and it's nothing to do with Carlos Correa. It's just, it's pretty tough. Anytime you give any player a 10-year contract in Major League Baseball, by the way, I'm rooting for the players. Like, get as much money, get as many years as you possibly can. Like, I'm always pro players, make your money. But just from a team building perspective, like, do I want the Yankees to sign Correa for 10 years? No, I don't. So I don't understand. I don't have a problem with teams, showing some trepidation when it comes to giving out a contract that long. After I selected Carlos Correa, Justin Verlander and Alek Manoah go. So back-to-back starting pitchers there at the end of the 7th and the first pick of the 8th round. I took Brandon Lau. So there's a few other second basemen here available. Lau will chip in a few steals, but overall, I think he fits what I'm looking for. Not a lot of consistency. He's very streaky, but by the end of the season, I mean, we're probably talking about like mid-30s home runs for Brandon Lau. 240, 250-ish batting average. So I'm probably going to have to pick the batting average back up a little bit, but I love the power that I have here on this team so far. Obviously, punting steals. I've only got 2 starting pitchers, so we'll see how that turns out and which closers make it back as well. Something I'll be looking at next go around here. After I took Brandon Lau, Jorge Polanco goes off the board. Bobby Witt goes off the board. Pick 88. I believe Beadon is a big prospect guy, too. He also has Wander Franco on his team, so living up to the name, the theme of the team. I appreciate that. And after Bobby Witt, Javier Baez. So lots of middle infielders going this range of the draft. The end of the 7th, the early 8th round. And Sarah, you are now on the clock. Giancarlo Stanton goes 90th overall. I'm sorry, Chris.
Was hoping he would make it back to me.
I appreciate the dedication to the mock draft, by the way, because Sarah mentioned she's using a draft software, and I see her looking off into the distance on her side screen. So I do appreciate the dedication to the mock draft. This is great. I'm going to ask you some questions about the draft software too, because I'm actually just genuinely curious myself as to which one you're using. But after you make your pick, we'll ask you about it. We'll see what's going on here. Man, I don't know. I've only got 2 starting pitchers, Lance Lynn and Aaron Nola. I don't know, Chris, man. We've got our SP preview part 1 coming up, and it's like, I don't, in a 12-team league, probably don't actually love that, Nola and Lance Lynn together.
But based on how we collectively feel about the starting pitcher position, this is the approach, right?
Yeah.
Because we all mostly agree that it's light on maybe that second tier of starters.
Shoot. I think I just lost my pick, but that's okay.
Do you want us to back it out? I can tell Scott to back it out.
No, it's okay. I was trying to do it, and right as I hit pick, it picked Brian Reynolds for me. I was trying to get Kenley Jansen.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So hold on. We'll tell Scott to back it out because.
Sorry.
It's all good. Yeah. But we'll get you back on track there. Either way, I mean, I think Brian Reynolds would have been a fine pick at this point in the draft.
No,
so
he would have been. He definitely would have been. I wanted a closer. So thank you for the backup. I don't love that pick. Like, Kenley doesn't have a job yet, and I am not sure. I didn't love how he looked at the end of the season, but I want to make sure I've got some saves somewhere, and we're in round 8 now. So I just needed to grab myself a closer. And if I had 30 more seconds, I might have picked a different one.
He's gonna close somewhere. You know, he's not gonna sign to be a setup man. He's gonna be a closer.
I would say that there is a 95% of that happening, Chris. The only pushback I'll have is last year I was so confident that if you drafted Craig Kimbrell, even if he was traded somewhere, he was going to be the closer no matter where he was traded. And then, of course, he's traded to the White Sox.
But he didn't have a say in that.
Sure, right.
You know, Kenley Jansen has a say in where he's going to go. The only team he's been publicly linked to, as far as I know, is the Marlins, which I don't think that would be the best usage of the Marlins' fairly limited resources. They still need about 4 bats, but you know, he's definitely going to be the closer in Miami if that's where he goes. And even if he returns to Los Angeles, I think he's going to be the closer. It seems like it's been 4 years that we've been waiting for someone else to they're going to get rid of, they're not going to trust him as the closer. And every time he looks iffy, they still go back to him. So even if he returns to Los Angeles, he's going to be the closer.
Yeah, as great as Blake Trinan was, if he goes back, he's going to be. I don't think that they're going to. I've heard some rumblings. I've read some things. Yeah. I think the Dodgers trust Blake Trinan. And as great as he pitched last year, you can't really blame them. So do we see Kenley go to the Padres, stay in the same division? I think it's possible. The Marlins, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. We'll see what happens. You know what's going to be crazy, Chris? Once the lockout ends, we're going to have just like a flurry of signings and trades. It's going to be insane. We're going to have so many emergency podcasts. I'm kind of ripping my hair out.
Yeah, because spring training's going to start like 4 days after whenever they come to an agreement.
And like Carlos Correa is not going to have a team to go to. Like he's not going to have a spring training to report to, which is, it just sounds so weird. After Sara selected Kenley Jansen, we see Willie Adames go, Max Muncy, Scott selects Brian Reynolds. So he's actually probably happy with you, Sara, that you backed that pick out. RJ selects Will Smith, closer with the Atlanta Braves. And now, Chris, you are on the clock for 2.
Yep.
What are we thinking? Are we going dual hitter again here?
Oh, yeah. Dual hitter for sure. We've got a handful of outfielders and a corner infielder that we're considering. We will go with just taking a chance on the guys who I think have a better chance of being there next time around. So I'm taking Christian Yelich here.
I figured you would.
Sticking with my proclamations that I've made on the podcast and in writing that I think Christian Yelich's chances of bouncing back are better than he gets credit for. And then I'm taking Kyle Schwarber. Sorry, Scott. I know that's Scott's guy, but
that is also my guy. I love Kyle Schwarber.
He qualifies, I think, as a big beefy baseball boy, so I love him.
Oh yeah.
And I just the attempts that the improvements that he's made, you know, to tap into the power, I think there's a lot to like about it. Scott talked about that on the outfield preview part 2, I believe.
Yep.
He's a legit elite power hitter who I don't really care where he ends up. He's going to be an elite power hitter, but the fact that he was so good with Boston last season, which is, you know, arguably the toughest place for left-handed power in baseball, that tells you how special that tool is for him. So, filled out my outfield.
Well, and I just think.
Go ahead, sir.
Nope, keep going. Sorry.
Oh no, I filled out my
outfield
now because I can't move Tatis. So.
No,
All right.
I was just going to say, I also think with Schwarber, the thing that's really interesting is that the changes he made with Kevin Long look sustainable. Like they don't look like things that are a flash in the pan. And the other guy who made similar changes, although obviously with different results, is Trey Turner, which is one of the reasons I didn't have one of the early picks in this draft, but I would actually take Turner over Tatis every draft.
All right. Yeah, I know that has been a point of contention for some people in the industry. I feel like we're all kind of pro Tatis. I think his overall upside is still higher. Obviously, the downside is more prevalent with Tatis just because of the injuries, but it's nothing performance related. But man, like Trey Turner, look, it's 1A and 1B situation. I think Turner is good for 20 to 25 homers, 30 steals, and obviously fantastic counting stats with the Dodgers.
And the thing is, like, even though he's getting up there in age, there's been almost zero decline in his sprint speed. I think he did fall all the way to 5th in baseball in sprint speed last season, according to StatCast, as opposed to being 1st or 2nd like he had been the previous few years. So, yeah, he's one of those guys where, like, even if the power does slip a little bit from his high the last 2 years, he'd probably just steal more bases. You know, like if he hits a few more singles and a few fewer doubles and home runs, he's probably going to turn those into a few more steals.
Chris, I'm actually seeing Trey Turner's sprint speed as the 100.
My pick just got stalled again. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm a rookie over here, but my screen is literally doing the like loading thing.
Don't
worry about it. It is fine.
Want
Jesse Winker is fine. No, Jesse Winker is fine. He's great.
I think Scott put you back on the clock. So if you want to actually make a different pick, feel free to do so.
Scott, you were the nicest person, and I really am sorry that I've been such a ridiculous human being during this draft.
It's all good. You take Jonathan India here with your pick. I don't know if I actually mentioned it, Chris. I wanted to mention it, but yeah, Trey Turner, 100th percentile in sprint speed according to his StatCast page. So he's if not the fastest, like I don't know. I think that's
I'm actually trying to pull up the like year over year sprint speed data from StatCast just to confirm. But yeah, he's if he's not, one of the, if he's not the fastest player in baseball, he is, last season he was actually, average sprint speed per feet per second was 30.7, which was the highest in baseball. Not the highest home plate to first base, I will say. But yeah, there's been no loss of foot speed whatsoever for Trey Turner.
All right, let's catch people up on what's going on here. Chris, you took Christian Yelich, then Kyle Schwarber. We see Giovanni Gallegos. Scott selects Yu Darvish, who I believe is SP3. Then Marcelo Ozuna, Trevor Rogers. Sarah took Jonathan India. Anthony Rendon goes.
Rendon was one of the ones I was hoping would make it to me.
Jordan Romano and Cody Bellinger both go. So, jeez. Those are two players I really wanted. So it's very frustrating. And of course,
money.
Sean Snow selects Shane McClanahan. Yeah, let's play the. Actually, no, I don't. Do I have it queued up? I don't have it queued up. I'm gonna have to find it. Oh, that stinks. All right. In the meantime, Sarah, I will ask you about the draft software that you're using, the name of it, and maybe how you use it, because I'm very interested. And in the meantime, I'm gonna try and figure out who I'm gonna pick. So you can talk about it.
Yeah, no, I use the RotoWire draft software. I like it because of the way it color codes the tiers, and I like it because I can set up multiple drafts with it with different settings, right? So I can I can create a head-to-head roto setting based on the number of games that a different league wants it to, like, that somebody is qualified for. All of the different websites have different qualifications. I play on NFBC, I play on Fantrax, I play on CBS. So it helps me just not have to have that moment of panic of like, oh, is this person qualified on which one? So I set up a real quick board for this draft today, and I'm pretty happy with it, although it's difficult with the 1 minute picks. I'll probably abandon it in a round or two.
No,
that's how it usually goes for me. Yeah, when you get to about 100, and it's like, it's not worth keeping up on anymore.
Yeah. All right. So Tim selects Shane Baz. I took Dylan Cease. I need another starting pitcher. A lot of people expecting the monster breakout this season for Dylan Cease. Look at that. I've got 2 White Sox pitchers. So I think I could piece it together here.
Yeah, I saw
Aaron
somebody
Nola.
say on Twitter that you can't call Dylan Cease a breakout candidate. And if you know anything about me and my beliefs on breakout candidates, I strongly disagree.
Yeah.
Yes, he broke out last season. He can also break out again. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
100%
agree.
sure he will. And Dylan Cease is one of those guys that just like, if you have him on your fantasy team, I feel like you just can't watch him pitch because it's an emotional experience to watch Dylan Cease pitch. But I certainly think there's an incredible amount of talent there, and he could, have a Corbin Burns-esque breakout, not to that level, but to, making the leap to be one of the best pitchers in the league. It's within the realm of possibility.
All right, I am running out of time here, and I'm going to select Yasmani Grandal. Don't worry, by the way, Sarah. Like, trying to host a mock draft while also drafting, I've definitely messed up plenty of times and have made some wonky picks. So it's a unique thing that we're trying to pull off here, but a lot more White Sox for me. Dylan Cease and Yasmani Grandal. I get my SP3. I get my catcher. I still do not have a closer. The top closer in my rankings is Aroldis Chapman, and I just don't want to do it. So if you listen to the relief pitcher preview that we did, Aroldis Chapman was my bust pick. I am worried about how much he slowed down after the sticky substance crackdown, and the walks were terrible. Velocity was still fine. Swinging strikes were still fine. I get all that. The Yankees, they have two great candidates behind him in Jonathan Loaizaga and Chad Green. So overall, I'm just a little bit worried about Aroldis Chapman. I'd rather not get involved. After Grandal goes, we see Joey Votto and Carlos Rodon. Sarah, let's check out your team and see what's going on here, because it's been a while since we've done that. And let's see. You've got JT Realmuto. You've got Jonathan India, Chris Bryant, Xander Bogaerts. So filling out your infield now. You still have those two outfielders, of course, Kyle Tucker and Starling Marte. And you have 3 pitchers total, the same as me, except you have one closer. You have Garrett Cole, Chris Sale, and Kenley Jansen. And you're on deck. Are you looking to select another pitcher here?
It very much. We know what the person in front of me did. I am not going to pick another pitcher here. Give me 1 second.
No problem. Yeah, make that pick happen here. Aroldis Chapman goes. So I don't know if Kayla's watching or not, but
you're off the hook, Scott or Frank.
Yeah. She selects. Chris, you were on a relief pitcher preview. Do you share my concern in Aroldis Chapman?
Yeah, I definitely think there are real reasons to be concerned, not just the dip in productivity after the sticky substance crackdown, but also just he's been banged up a lot lately. It hasn't cost him a lot of time, but he's had a couple of knee issues. I think he had an elbow issue at one point. So yeah, I think Aroldis Chapman, we could be nearing the end of him being one of the high end closers.
All right, we've got 130 people watching. We have 49 likes. So if you have not liked the video yet, please do hit that thumbs up button here on YouTube.
Smash that like button.
Smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already as well. We really do appreciate it. Let's see what else has happened since Joey Votto went, and then Carlos Rodon, Jesse Winker, Aroldis Chapman. Sarah, you select Ryan Mountcastle, and then Lance McCullers goes as well. All right, so let's talk about Ryan Mountcastle. The Orioles are pushing the walls back in left field in Camden Yards. So the immediate thought for most people is that this is going to affect right-handed power, something that obviously drives the skill set of Ryan Mountcastle. How worried are you about that for him and maybe other right-handed batters on that team like Trey Mancini, for example?
I'm much more worried about it for Trey Mancini than I am for Ryan Mountcastle. And I've actually taken a look at his spray chart and sort of tried to figure out where those home runs would land with the new wall. Ryan Mountcastle has a spray pattern that goes pretty much to all fields. He hits way more to all fields than Trey Mancini does. And frankly, I think he might lose a handful of home runs, but I think he's still good for 30. So I'm a little bit less worried about Ryan Mountcastle than I am about some of the other Orioles hitters, and Trey Mancini moved way down on my rankings because of that.
Yeah, I will say with Trey Mancini, it's a good point that you bring up because he typically hits a lot of ground balls and he relies on a high home run to fly ball ratio. So someone who I'd have to look into it to see if he's just hitting wall scrapers or if he's just, hitting moonshots, because he was in the home run derby, and he was pretty impressive in the home run derby. But I would imagine someone that relies on a high home run to fly ball ratio might be affected a little bit more in that move back in left field of Camden Yards. All right, after you took Ryan Mountcastle, Lance McCullers, Jazz Chisholm goes. Look, we've talked about Jazz as a bust on the podcast, but that's at his ADP, which is like 90. So for him to go 27 picks after that, like 2 rounds-ish, I kind of like getting Jazz Chisholm in the 10th round. And Scott selects Mitch Haniger and then Blake Snell. Chris, you are on the clock. What are we doing?
Considering doing something weird, but I think I'm going to go away from it because I think and hope one of the 2 guys I want can come back around. So I'm going to take Dalton Varsho at catcher. I wrote about him today as kind of the generic brand version of JT Realmuto. I did my 5 generic alternatives to the name brand stars inside the top 60 picks piece today, and that was one of them. And I'm going to go with Nelson Cruz, who has fallen long enough. He's been the most profitable baseball player in fantasy baseball for the last 7 years. He is always better than where he gets drafted. We do not know where he's going to play. There are 15 additional options for him to play, however, this season. So I think Nelson Cruz is going to continue raking until he decides to retire. He has not decided to retire. And so I think Nelson Cruz is going to continue to rake. And the day Nelson Cruz stops being one of the best hitters in baseball is going to be a sad day, I suppose.
I kind of just hope that he pulls off the big poppy and he just keeps crushing the ball until he eventually retires. I will say he fell off quite a bit when he got moved over to Tampa Bay. So we hit 226 with 13 home runs in 55 games, a 725 OPS. And I wonder if it might be related to Tropicana, right? Like we've heard Willie Adames talk about how it's kind of hard to see the ball there, and the batter's eye kind of affects everything. So, I mean, the first time Nelson Cruz is playing there, it's he's in the middle of some pretty important games. Obviously, they're competing for the American League East, and he's just playing in an environment which is kind of sketchy at times. So, I wonder if that might be part of it, or maybe this is just the beginning of the end.
Yeah, and the underlying skill set wasn't quite as strong as it was the year before. His whiff rate was a little high. His average exit velocity, while still elite, was a little worse than it was the year before. And so it could be a situation where maybe small levels of decline can tend to stack on top of each other and make the overall decline bigger. But he still had a 364 expected WOBA last season. He's not a guy who has historically underperformed his expected WOBA. In fact, he's actually he's underperformed his xWOBA a little bit by about 0.009 points for his career. So last year it was 0.18. So not really too concerned about that. But yeah, there are some slight signs of decline. But when your decline is still what ended up being 32 homers in 140 games with a 265 average, you're still pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is true. He was still phenomenal when he was on the Twins. So we'll see if he can get back on track there. Sarah, you do have 10 seconds left, so just giving you a heads up there. Before you, hopefully, yes. Oh, and you select Ranger Suarez. All right, so I want to get your thoughts there because I know he's someone that Scott likes quite a bit. But after Chris selected Nelson Cruz, we see Wilson Contreras go, Pablo Lopez, Craig Kimbrell. Who am I going to use as a closer? I don't know. Josh Donaldson. And Sarah, again, you select Ranger Suarez at pick 126 as your, I believe, SP3 on your team. So you now have Chris Sale, you have Garrett Cole, and you have Ranger Suarez. Does that mean that you are buying into what we saw down the stretch last year where Ranger Suarez was amazing?
Yeah, this is definitely a high upside pick. I could have gone safer. I mean, Kershaw is still available. And if I just wanted to pack some innings in and feel like I've got a guy who might be hurt, but when he shows up, he's going to be okay. I really wanted the upside here. I think I've built a squad where I can do that. And so I want to see what Ranger Suarez can do. And I didn't think he'd come back to me. So that's where I went.
All right. Scotty will be happy to hear that. He's a huge fan of Ranger Suarez. I think he has him ranked inside of his top 40 starting pitchers this year. So pretty excited. Lots of ground balls. Can he remain as effective as he was last year when he's throwing his fastball sinker combo about almost 70% of the time, Chris? I think that's what it was for Ranger Suarez. So
yeah, you don't really see it was about 70 to 75% of the time. I think his changeup was about 20%. His changeup was a really good swing and miss pitch for him last season as well. And so, he's not quite a one pitch pitcher, but he's a two pitch pitcher truly. And, the one, you don't see a lot of guys succeed at the major league level throwing 80% fastballs anymore. It's just not something you see. And the rare times you do see it, it's more like a Lance Lynn where he, has kind of 3 or 4 different types of fastballs that he can throw, and he'll cut it and take something off it, throw it up in the zone, throw it down in the zone. Ranger Suarez doesn't necessarily have that kind of repertoire with his fastball, but it was really successful for him last season. It was more successful for him when he was pitching as a starter than as a reliever, which is kind of stunning. So I don't know. It feels a little Zach Plesac-y to me.
Mm.
Please don't
Very small sample size. Really impressive. But that being said, just because it happened to Zach Plesac doesn't mean it's going to happen to Ranger Suarez. There have been others like, who could have been Zach Plesac? Corbin Burns. And instead he was still arguably the best pitcher in baseball. So like Zach Plesac is the comp you throw out there when you want to make someone feel bad about it. But Zach Plesac wasn't fated to be Zach Plesac. It could have gone a different way. And it's entirely possible that Ranger Suarez, can continue to, be a successful pitcher. It just, I think the margin for error is fairly slim with his approach.
All right. After Sarah selected
I definitely
Ranger
agree
Suarez.
with that.
Go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
Nope. I was going to say, I definitely agree with that. I think that the other factor here is that a lot of the guys who are at the top of my hitter board at the moment are first basemen, and their positions I already have. So I just decided that it was worth it taking a risk and seeing if I can get a high upside guy.
All right. Yeah. After you selected Ranger Suarez, we did see Clayton Kershaw go, then Josh Bell, the beginning of the profit pocket at first base, starting to go here. Josh Bell, Rhys Hoskins goes as well. Then we see Chris Bassett. I select Sean Manaea, and pitching preview coming up. I don't know that I've talked about Manaea enough yet. I'm excited. I'm pretty excited about Sean Manaea. I'll tell you why in just a second. After I selected Manaea, we see Jared Kelenic go, Joey Gallo. I got Mark Melancon. He's my first closer. Don't love that. Maybe he gets you 20 saves, 25 saves with the Diamondbacks if we're lucky. He was still really good last year, but I don't know. Eventually he's going to fall off. Lourdes Gurriel and Jorge Soler go off the board. Sean Manaea made huge gains in terms of velocity last year. I don't know if those gains are going to remain, but if they can, his underlying numbers were outstanding last year. And you look at the projection systems on Fangraphs, I think it's Steamer that has him as like the 15th best starting pitcher in fantasy baseball this year. Now, I'm not ranking him that way. He's inside of my top 40, and he was in my Sleepers 1.0 article because I like the gains that he made last year and the strikeout minus walk rate and the fact that his swinging strike rate was the best we've ever seen. I think if he gets traded away, to a team that can convince him to use his sinker less, I think that that's something that can only help Sean Manaea. I think he has good secondary stuff. So there's a lot going on, and I really like what we saw last year. So if I can wind up with him as my SP4 in a 12-team league, I'm about it. And that's what he is on this team for me. I've got Lance Lynn, Aaron Nola, Dylan Cease, and Sean Manaea. Not the most reliable, but I think that there's a good amount of upside there. Chris, you mentioned Corbin Burns before, and he could have went 2 different ways last year. Obviously, he broke out in National League Cy Young. He was phenomenal last year. I agree with what you said earlier about Dylan Cease. And I think that there's like a lot of parallels between Cease and Corbin Burns, where just because Cease is going higher than you'd like this year and he broke out last year does not mean there's not another step for him to get to. He's still young enough. The strikeout stuff is insane. If he works, if the control improves and he limits home runs better, I mean, we could be talking about Dylan Cease as a top 10, top 12 starting pitcher next season. And then, that's where the true breakout comes, right? Where like this guy's a second or third round pick this time next year. So I think based on his skill set, it's entirely possible. But yeah, overall, I agree with you that I think there's still another level that he can get to in terms of a break.
Well, to be clear, I'm probably more skeptical on Dylan Cease. I don't necessarily have faith in him making it just because, and this might be, there are a handful of players, that I think it is harder to analyze them if you watch them play. And I think Dylan Cease is one of them. And I know that's the kind of thing that will make everyone scream, "Oh, you nerds with your spreadsheets, watch the game." But like, I have a lot of trouble watching Dylan Cease pitch and thinking that he's a good pitcher. And it's because he just he goes through these stretches where he just doesn't seem to have any command. He doesn't seem to have any poise on the mound. He seems to melt down really easily. But then, you look at the overall numbers last season and it's kind of like, well, maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe my personal opinion on whether Dylan Cease is good when I watch him doesn't matter. And so I kind of have to make a point to divorce that, but it's hard for me to get away from that. And part of that is also just, when you actually do look at the numbers, the one thing that does happen is he gets hit really hard a lot, especially on his fastball. His fastball last season allowed a 385 xWOBA. The rest of his pitches were all outstanding. He gets a ton of whiffs with his sliders, curveball, and changeup, and an xWOBA of 214 or lower on each of those three pitches. That is outrageously good. That's elite stuff. The problem is, as he's gone away from the fastball 47% last season, he might still throw it too much. And so you wonder, if there's room for him to drop that to, let's say, 40%, can he keep the walks down while doing that? It's a tough balance to strike, but I think there's a lot to like about him as a talent. And it's starting pitcher. There's no such thing as a pitching prospect as the way we say it, but you could easily say there's no such thing as a pitcher. And it would be just as true because they're so hard to predict. And relatively small changes can turn into huge results.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, year over year, we always see guys break out that we weren't even expecting. I remember 2 years ago, Corbin Burns going outside the top 300. And then, of course, has the breakout that he does. And it's going to happen every year in fantasy baseball. After Jorge Soler went, we see Framber Valdez, Camilo Doval. Sarah, you selected Jared Walsh. Come back to you in a second on that one. Austin Meadows goes. And then Miguel Sano, Adam Wainwright to Scotty, and CJ Crone, the last of the Profit Pocket. Yes, he was the last one. I was actually considering him with my pick. I think CJ Crone is a little bit better in this format too, because you can reap all the rewards when he's at home in Coors Field. And then if you wanted to bench him when he's on the road because he's like league average or maybe even worse than that, I have absolutely no problem doing that. Sarah, let's talk about your pick of Jared Walsh. Last year had a breakout season himself, and he did that without Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon in the lineup for most of the season. There are some underlying things. He hits too many ground balls. He struggles against lefties. What's your outlook on Jared Walsh this season?
I think Jared Walsh has a job. He's going to get to play every single day in a lineup that is pretty good offensively relative to what we've come to expect from the Angels in recent years. And because of that, I need some power. And I think that Jared Walsh has power, and he's got a good lineup to drive in some runs. So I like putting him in that utility spot.
All right, Chris, you select Franmil Reyes and Justin Turner. I love it because you're going all in on these utility-only bats. So you got him and Nelson Cruz, and of course you get your third baseman there with Justin Turner. Let's pull up the team and see what you're working with after you took all those pitchers early on. So you've got Darsho. I made his name one. He's like Cher. He's Darsho.
That makes sense.
Dalton Varsho, Jose Abreu, Justin Turner at third base. You have Tim Anderson, Christian Yelich, Kyle Schwarber, Fernando Tatis, Nelson Cruz, Franmil Reyes, and then your pitchers, of course, Zach Wheeler, Shane Bieber, Josh Hader, Raisel Iglesias. So you have not taken a pitcher since.
Yep. And
the lineup is really shaping out. What do you think of this strategy? You're, first time this offseason trying it out.
I think it's pretty good. People who there are, this is not a team for the faint of heart, I would say, because there's a lot of risk. Dalton Varsho, very unproven. Jose Abreu, Justin Turner, Let's see, Nelson Cruz, all I think 35 or older. Anderson gets hurt a lot. Yelich, the back issue. Schwarber has had some injury issues. Tatis has, this is a team that some folks are going to hate because of the risk that's involved, and even in the pitchers, Shane Bieber, Raisel Iglesias had a career year. Zach Wheeler had a career year. We don't know how they're going to follow those up. But it's a really high upside team, and if everyone's clicking, which won't happen, obviously, not good things don't always happen for everyone all of the time. But if this is a team where, more good things happen than bad things, it's going to be really hard to beat. It's just, I'm opening myself up for some bad things to happen, by taking such a risky mix of older guys and injury risk or injury prone guys. But
right.
I don't know. You're trying to win a league, and I guess that approach might be a little more salient in a roto league than a head-to-head categories, because mostly in a head-to-head categories, you're trying to get to the playoffs first. But yeah, I'm not afraid of risk is what I would say. At this point, I've reached the point in both baseball and football where, like, I'm not so afraid of finishing in last place. I'm not afraid of things going wrong. I want to take the upside swings.
Yeah, and I mean, that's basically, as long as I've been here at CBS, I mean, that's how you've built your teams, right? I mean, you are the biggest proponent of the Giancarlo Stantons, the Byron Buxtons of the world. So they might come with that little asterisk that they need to stay healthy. But if they do, then they, of course, come with a bunch of upside. And I'm with you just on Justin Turner in general. I understand he's older. He might not play every day at this point, but that almost kind of lends itself to this format where, if you draft we'll see what you do, but if you draft maybe an upside third baseman later or just another one, you can, whenever Justin Turner's not playing, you can throw that player in the lineup. So he's really my fallback option, where if I miss out on that top group, Justin Turner is the one that I'm looking at. After you selected him, we see Blake Trinan go, who, if the season started today, he would be the Dodgers closer. Scotty selects Scott Barlow. Then we see Luis Severino, Adley Rutschman. Sarah, you select Chris Taylor. And then Logan Gilbert goes off the board, someone I do like quite a bit myself. I think a lot of breakout potential there for Logan Gilbert. Sarah, talk to me about Chris Taylor, who you wind up with here, who has, I believe, 3 different eligibilities. So that's great in this format. Second, outfield, and shortstop. A little bit of power, a little bit of speed, and no more Corey Seager with the Dodgers means that Chris Taylor should play every day.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Taylor, I took Chris Taylor last year in a league where I waited a bit too long to feel comfortable with some of my middle infield positions. And I took him as a backup, and honestly, he was in my lineup the entire season. He was absolutely phenomenal. He tailed off a bit in the second half, but I think he's a utility guy that plays like a Zobrist, right? Like, he's a utility guy who will play every day. He's going to play in a lineup that has men on base all of the time. And the deal that he signed is a deal for a guy who's an everyday player. So I like Chris Taylor's flexibility, and I like having him on my teams as much as I can.
Yeah, for sure. He was awesome last year. I think people have to get this idea out of their head that, he's not just a utility, he's not just a utility guy anymore. Yes, he is going to bounce around, but he's going to play every day. He's not your typical, utility guy who plays 4 times a week or something like that. He's going to play. He's getting paid like it. You mentioned that. And he was awesome when he played last year. So I am on the clock, and I'm looking at a few different things here, and I feel like it's pretty early for that guy, but top of my rankings. All right, I need an outfielder. I don't know where he's going to play. Spoke about him on the outfield preview, but I mean, it's just profit every year for Eddie Rosario. He wasn't healthy first part of the season last year, but once he did get healthy with the Atlanta Braves down the stretch, he was awesome, and we saw that carry over into the postseason. So I think he's just same old Eddie Rosario he's always been, where he's probably going to be a top 60 or 70 player overall. He's going to hit 260. He's going to give you 25 homers, solid counting stats. And now he has all these other opportunities in the National League because he should be a DH. He's a pretty terrible fielder, but he's still very valuable as a hitter. So I like Eddie Rosario myself. I think part of the reason he's going so late is just because he doesn't have a job yet. So I think people are trying to figure out where he is going to play. Okay, Corey Knebel is available, and I need another closer. So I believe he's the closer of the Phillies. That might change if they sign somebody else, but yeah, as of now, he's their closer. We've seen him have massive upside in the past, lots of strikeouts, good ratios last year. And so I have 4 starting pitchers. I've got 2 closers in Knebel and Mark Melancon, and filling out the lineup. I just need a few more utility spots here as well. At the turn, we saw Tim select Trent Grisham and Trevor Bauer. So Bauer going here, first pick of the 14th round. We still need to wait and see if there will be any suspension handed down by the league or the Dodgers for that matter. So we'll see what happens, obviously, with Trevor Bauer. After he goes, Patrick Sandoval, phenomenal pick, Sean, who I know was taking a lot of our favorite picks earlier on in the draft. He also selected Brendan Rodgers, who Scott likes quite a bit. Sandoval is amazing. He just has to stay healthy. Dealt with a stress fracture in his back last year, but the swinging strike rate was awesome. And then Raz Beaton selects Alex Kirilloff. Chris, do you share the enthusiasm that we have for Patrick Sandoval?
Yes. Yeah, he was in my queue for sure. I think there's a lot to like about him. You've got that. It's a little like Kevin Gausman-y, where he's got that one, really, really good pitch that he can lean on. And in his case, it's a changeup rather than Gausman's splitter. But, they're somewhat similar pitches. He gets a lot of whiffs with them. And he really rode that to a breakout last season. And Sandoval wasn't like a huge prospect, but he was on prospect lists. He was a prospect of some renown. So it didn't entirely come out of nowhere. There's skill there for sure. So Sandoval, I was considering taking him with my next pick if he had made it.
All right. We'll see what Chris does instead there. We have 117 people watching now. We appreciate each and every one of you. It's pretty late here on the East Coast. We're coming up on 10:30 Eastern time. So we do appreciate all of you hanging out with us here on Tuesday night. If you haven't already, please like the video. We have 65 likes and again, almost 120 people watching. So we want to get to 100 by the end of this video. So hit that little thumbs up button on YouTube, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All right, let's see what else is going on. Alex Kirilloff goes.
I know Scott likes Kirilloff a lot. I feel like we haven't talked about him all that much. He barely came up in the outfield preview. I think Scott picked him as his sleeper or breakout in first base, but that was a couple weeks ago. So, I do think like the underlying numbers are pretty impressive for him. He's dealt with wrist injuries in multiple seasons. I think 2 out of the last 3, perhaps, maybe 2 out of the last 4, and that's a concern. But he hit the ball a lot better than his overall numbers would make you think last season. 367 expected WOBA, 541 expected slugging percentage. It's really impressive. So I do think Alex Kirilloff could be one of those guys who, I could see like a Nick Castellanos type season from him.
Yeah, I definitely think that's in the range of outcomes. The power is what I worry about most for him, Chris, because he hits a lot of ground balls still, but the hit tool is there. I think he has just like the raw power. He just has to channel that in lifting the ball. And if he does that, we should see some, 20, 25 home runs. I mean, like in his prime, he's still young. I think he can approach like a 30 home run hitter with a good batting average. Coming back from the wrist injury, I'm actually happy he had surgery because it's something he's dealt with for a couple of years now, dating back to the minors. So happy to see that he finally got that out of the way. Let's catch people up on some picks here. After Kirilloff went, Tyler Malley, Ty France. Sarah, you selected Nathan Eovaldi, who I think is just a great value at this point, round 14. Taylor Rogers. Darn you, George, because I love Taylor Rogers this year, and I was hoping he would make it back to me, but he did not. Ian Anderson goes, Hunter Renfroe, and Zach Gallen. All right, Sarah. So you wind up with Nathan Eovaldi. I believe he is your SP4. So I'll quickly pull that up. And yeah, let's see what you got here. You've got Garrett Cole. You've got Ranger Suarez. You've got Chris Sale, of course. And you have Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi was great last year. He was a 3.75 ERA, 1.19 whip, over a strikeout per inning. He just needs to stay healthy. He did that last year, 182 innings. He gave you 32 starts. The underlying numbers say he was actually much better than that. What are you expecting from Nathan Eovaldi this year?
I think Nathan Eovaldi gives you a lot of strikeouts, and I think when he's healthy, like you said, he gives you innings. I don't think anything happened to Nathan Eovaldi last year that, like the years where he's been hurt, he's had some workload issues prior that have made me really nervous. And I know 182 innings is a lot these days, but I don't think it's a lot relative to his career. So I like Eovaldi adding some Ks to my rotation. I'm pretty happy with my rotation right now. I need some more relief pitching. And I've got one more bat spot that will play every day before I get to my bench to fill. So I'm really just trying to pick the best guy on the board, whether it's a pitcher, whether it's a relief pitcher, whether it's a hitter.
All right. After you selected Nathan Eovaldi, again, Taylor Rogers, Ian Anderson, Scotty selects Hunter Renfroe for the hashtag brand. Then we see Zach Gallen go. Chris, you select Mike Clevenger. And I know we spoke earlier in the offseason. You said that you would like to wind up with one of those Tommy John recoveries on your team if you can. And then Eduardo Rodriguez, who, a little bit of a sneak peek, but I've got my Breakouts 2.0 coming out this week, and Erod will be part of it. What do you like about those two pitchers?
Are we writing our 2.0s this week?
This week? You might have missed an email somewhere.
I guess so. I was out of office. It's fine.
You are expected to write Bust 2.0 for this Friday.
Okay, good. I got that. Eduardo Rodriguez, he is one of the better pitchers in baseball when it comes to suppressing quality of contact. Expected batting average against 233, expected slugging percentage against 367 last season. And that's been true for much of his career. And, he's a high strikeout guy too, not an elite guy, but 27%, 26% in 2018, 25% in 2019. So you add all of it up, and I just think there's a very good profile that mostly just got unlucky last season. 4.74 ERA, 3.47 expected ERA. I think he's someone who's likely to give you a mid to high threes ERA. Whip won't be great probably, so that hurts. But I think there's a chance that he ends up having a 200 strikeout season with a 3.4 ERA. Like, I don't think that's out of the question for Eduardo Rodriguez, and it's kind of keeping in the combo of him and Mike Clevenger, kind of keeping in with the theme of my team of just all the guys that give people stomach aches.
For sure. The best K- walk rate last year for Eduardo Rodriguez at 20.4%, over 10 Ks per nine, and the best walk rate of his career, 2.68 walks per nine. You mentioned all the underlying numbers were awesome for him last year. I mean, man, can someone be lucky for an entire season? I guess so. Like, we kind of saw it from Aaron Nola last year too. I mean, there might be something just like under the hood that we're not seeing with Erod, but I love the fact that he gets out of the AL East as well, Chris, and now moves over to Comerica, which is one of the better venues to pitch in, and it's going to be cold early in the season. That should, limit home runs, hopefully. And overall, it's a pretty good division to pitch in too in the American League Central. So, man, I think that more than anything else, not just like the underlying numbers, of course, those are great, but the change in venue is phenomenal for Erod. Yeah,
I could see him taking, I could see him being a top 15 starting pitcher next season.
All right. That's lofty, but hey, he's on my breakouts list. So,
hey, look, Zach Wheeler's done it. Like you talk about a guy who hadn't necessarily shown that before. Sometimes guys make that kind of leap.
All right, let's catch people up on some picks here. After you took Erod, we see Avisail Garcia. Marcus Stroman goes, so we got a Cub there. Sarah, I'll get your thoughts on Stroman in just a little bit. Dansby Swanson. Noah Syndergaard goes. Sarah, you select Devin Williams. Luis goes, and then Luis Garcia. So first, talk to me about Devin Williams, Sarah, because he's not going to give you any saves, but he should give you elite ratios and strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does get a handful of saves. I watch the Brewers a lot in the NL Central, and Hader pitches 2 innings enough that Devin Williams gets a handful of save opportunities here or there. But I'm really looking for him with ratios, and I'm looking for him with Ks. I think that saves these days are like, that's a category I'm content to sort of punt. Like, I didn't zero it because obviously I put Jansen there, but like, I don't know. There's so many. There's 9-10 closers who you can say, yes, that's a guy, he's a closer, he's going to get 25 plus saves. At that point, I just want really good relievers, and Devin Williams is elite.
All right. I am trying to figure out what picks I'm going to make. I do want to ask you about Marcus Stroman. We had a question in the chat, too. Someone asked us about Nico Horner. So we'll get your thoughts on those two players. I am trying to figure out what I'd like to do here. He should not be here. It's pick 179. I don't even like DJ LeMahieu, but I am going to select DJ LeMahieu. Like, he should not be here this late. I know he's not going to contribute the power that I want, but he should give me batting average. He should give me runs scored and chip in some modest RBI as well. I'm going to move him to second base just so it makes me feel better about having him on my team. Like,
yeah, that's my thing. I've got a spot at second base.
Yeah, having him in my utility spot just feels weird, so I'm not going to do that. But it's just too late. It's too late for DJ LeMahieu. So
yeah, I've had a hole at second base for like 5 rounds that I've been thinking about taking him, and I just never got there. And now, Sarah, I was trying to figure out when was the right time to start taking the non-closer pitchers because I wanted to get a couple of those guys. And so Sarah taking Devin Williams, it turns out I waited around too long. So now it's, hopefully some of those guys don't get taken in the next 12 picks because that can be a very useful and valuable thing in this format when you've got, let's say you've got 5 starting pitchers that you really like. But you've got 6 spots where pitchers can fit in. And so those days when your starters aren't starting, if you've got Devin Williams, if you've got, I won't say any of the other names just here, but if you've got those really, really good elite relievers, you can throw them in there and maybe pick up a random win or 3 strikeouts in a game. So, that in a daily league is super valuable.
Is this guy still available? Oh, do I want to take? There's a lot of guys like this still available.
He
All right,
really
I'm
did
take
look like Chris Sale in the playoffs.
He's awesome, and he was on my sleepers 1.0, and I think this is a really interesting format to use him in because I've already got enough guys that will give me wins that will go deep into starts. He's kind of a swing man. I don't know exactly what his role is going to be for the Red Sox. I'm talking about Tanner Houck, by the way. That's who I just selected in round 16. But the slider is phenomenal. The strikeout stuff is there for him. I think we could see a hybrid where, maybe half the year he starts, half the year he's a multi-inning reliever. Either way, it's not exactly what you were just talking about, Chris, but I think Tanner Houck can provide elite ratios, very good strikeouts, and when he starts, maybe he'll even chip in some wins. So I like getting one of these kind of hybrid players like a Tanner Houck or a Michael Kopech specifically in this format.
Yeah, I didn't realize Michael Kopech went off the board about 30 picks ago. That was also a little frustrating for me because I would have been happy to take him. Those guys in this format, like especially if it's someone who could go 2 innings, a couple times a week, you might get a random week where you get 4 or 5 innings out of Michael Kopech or Tanner Houck, even if they're not in the rotation, in which case you could get 8 strikeouts from those kind of guys. That's how good they are. And so, I think that's a very useful type of pitcher to have around in this format for sure.
All right. After I selected, let's just see in general what's been going on here. I feel like I've been doing a bad job of this. All right. So Keibert Ruiz went last round. Luis Garcia, Matt Chapman, Joe Adell, sticking with the theme. I like it. Yoan Moncada and Sonny Gray at the turn. I selected Tanner Houck. Then we see Luke Voigt go off the board, Anthony Rizzo, and Anthony DeSclafani. Now, I don't have a Giants pitcher on my team yet, but I've mentioned on previous mock drafts that one of my rules this season is that I have to wind up with at least one Giants pitcher on my team. So whether it's actually, no, I'm not going to mention their names. You can figure it out, but I do want to get one of those guys later on if I can. Aaron Savale goes pick 186 in round 16. All right, Sarah, you're on the clock. So after you make your pick, I'll ask you about a few of these cubbies.
Sean Snow continuing the theme, taking Joe Adell and Luke Voigt with his last 2 picks of just taking all the guys that we love.
Do it.
I wrote about Joe Adell today and I tweeted about this as well, but I'm having trouble figuring out what the argument for Jared Kelenic 100 picks ahead of Joe Adell is supposed to be. That's not a knock on Jared Kelenic, but he had a 615 OPS last season. Joe Adell's major league OPS is like 598. So that's really, there's no real difference between the two of them. Kelenic struck out about 29% of the time. Adell's at like 31%. So obviously, point in Kelenic's favor, but not exactly a point in his favor. Kind of damning with faint praise in that regard. And the minor league numbers very similar. The one thing I can think of is that one, Adell flamed out really bad in 2020 in a really high profile way, although Kelenic last year did as well. The other thing is just we've been touting Jared Kelenic as a guy who could potentially make a big fantasy impact. Going back to the 2019 draft season, he was like the top guy to draft and hold back then, or one of the top guys to draft and hold back then. And now it's 2022, and it hasn't happened yet. And so people are like, oh, this guy again? He's never going to do it. But Joe Adell is 3.5 months older than Jared Kelenic.
I'm about it, man. I actually like both quite a bit. They were both.
Yeah. I like Jared Kelenic a lot.
Right. Yeah. But if you're making the argument for one over the other, it doesn't make sense as to why they're 100 picks apart. I think if anything, I don't know that Jared Kelenic is technically overvalued right now. I think it's just that Joe Adell is very, very undervalued.
Yes.
So
that's the way I would say.
It's more to say about Adell than it is about Jared Kelenic. Sarah, last round, we saw Marcus Stroman go signed with your Chicago Cubbies. He's been rock solid, and I kind of feel like he's someone who's undervalued this season as well. So what are you expecting from Marcus Stroman with the Cubs?
I think Marcus Stroman's going to be great, and I think that the way he pitches is really going to work well at Wrigley Field. One of the things that was true at least until what we call Blue Friday in Chicagoland, the trade deadline last year for Cubs pitchers for like the last 5 years, is that the pitchers have outperformed their FIP, right? So you have a lot of Kyle Hendrickses and Alec Mills and all these guys who are ground ball specialists who are overperforming their FIP at Wrigley Field again and again. It's because that defense behind them was really solid. Now, I'm not about to say that Frank Schwindel is Anthony Rizzo or that Nico Horner is Javier Baez. They are not. But they are plus defenders. David Bodie is a plus defender. Patrick Wisdom is a plus defender. And they've got a lot of guys who in that rotation who are going to throw a lot of ground balls. They have a lot of pitchers who are designed to get a quality start, to get a lot of outs by the ground ball rather than the strikeout. And I think Stroman fits right into that.
Oh, that makes me feel great too, because I think overall, I've got him ranked, I think, around SP 40, which is higher than the consensus, the industry on Marcus Stroman. So I think he's a little bit undervalued based on what he did last year. Swinging strikes were up, gets a lot of ground balls, as Sarah mentioned. So really like that call out for Marcus Stroman. I've got another question coming up that we got in the chat. I'll get to that in a little bit, but I do want to see what else is going on here in the draft. Sarah, you selected Brandon Belt last round. Great for this format. Might not play against left-handed pitching. He deals with injuries, but when he's healthy and plays against righties, he absolutely mashes. So in a daily lineup league, you can plug Brandon Belt in against right-handed pitching, and he's just absolutely going to crush. So I love that pick. Hyunjin Ryu goes to George Kurtz. Then we see Raimel Tapia. Scotty selects Robbie Grossman, who we spoke about as the poor man's Trent Grisham on today's podcast that was released. Adolis Garcia. And Christopher, you select the other of those, I would say, really high-profile non-reliever types in Paul Sewell, who I was just looking this up. He ranked 5th among qualified relievers last year in K- walk rate last year, 30%. He was absolutely ridiculous. And you take our guy, Luis Garcia, Luis Arias, rather, and you could plug him in at second base. So I think 2 fine picks.
Yeah, I'm always a little hesitant with the relievers who've only really had the one great year, the one big breakout, because we talk about, like, to go back to Zach Plesac, he had 46 innings or something in 20. No, it was probably more than that. It was probably close to 60, right? He made 8 starts. Well, that's roughly what your average reliever throws in a given season. And so obviously it's spread out over the course of a full season and 50 some odd, or plus appearances. So I guess it's less possible that it's a fluke, but we see a lot of fluky performances from relievers from one year to the next. But Paul Sewell does seem to have, that Devin Williams type profile where the underlying numbers are incredibly strong. He's got, the one kind of go-to pitch that is really, really dominant. And so I think I feel pretty confident in him as that guy to just have around to put in your lineup when your starters aren't around. Yeah, it's that slider for Sewald that he threw 42% of the time last season. It was a really, really devastating pitch for him.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. I know some people have pointed out that he's like reshaped that slider, and that's basically the transformation that he's gone through and why he was so amazing last year. So hopefully he can keep that up. The Mariners bullpen in general, kind of tough to figure out. If you are trying to figure out who's getting saves this upcoming season, they have legitimately 4 candidates who are all worthy, from Drew Steckenrider to Paul Sewald, Diego Castillo, who did it for years in Tampa Bay, and now Ken Giles, who's coming back from Tommy John surgery.
Yep.
I think originally they signed Giles to this 2-year deal knowing they would get nothing from him last year. They wanted him to be the closer, but they also probably didn't foresee having all of these really dominant relievers now. So it's a good problem for them to have, and it's an awful problem for us to have in fantasy. After you selected Luis Arias, we see John Means Business go to RJ White, and then Tyler Stevenson to Scotty. Interesting. I got to ask him about that pick. Carlos Carrasco, Michael Conforto. Sarah, you select Michael Brantley. And then we see Dylan Carlson and Brandon Crawford. So Brantley is kind of like empty batting average-ish at this point. Like maybe he gets, low teens and home runs. And I was going to ask you this earlier, but I guess it makes sense now because you have both of them on your team. How do you think this batting order shakes out for the Astros? Because in my opinion, Kyle Tucker is better. He's like far and away better than Michael Brantley at this point. So like, do they hit Kyle Tucker second? I think Yordan Alvarez is going to continue to back cleanup. Should they drop Brantley down to 6? I mean, either way, it's good for you because you're going to get all those counting stats. But how do you think the Astros lineup shakes out this season, Sarah?
No, I think you're absolutely right that the Astros have some decisions to make. And part of the reason I wanted Brantley is because I didn't want to have to make those decisions. I can play them based on the lineup, right? So Brantley is a hedge so that when Tucker's on the lineup, I can put Brantley in the lineup. And you're right that he's not going to do as much in terms of running. He definitely doesn't have the power, but he's going to keep me from getting a 0. I'm going to get the same RBIs and runs that day. And so it's just a way to protect against the roster changes.
All right. So I'm listening to you. I'm trying to make my draft picks. I feel like sometimes it feels like I'm not listening to you. I am. It's just I'm trying to figure out who to draft as well. So I selected Eugenio Suarez, who I had to scroll down a little bit, but I wanted power. I wanted power with this pick. So last time I had LeMahieu, helps with the batting average. Now that affords me to take a hit at batting average and select a little bit more power. So something clicked for Suarez in September last year. He was amazing. I think he's a lock for 30+ homers. Can he pick that batting average up to, I don't know, even 230, 240? That would be acceptable with the power that he can provide. I'm pretty interested in Eugenio Suarez, where he's going now, outside the top 200. Okay. Is it time? Yeah, let's do it. I'm going to take one of those Giants pitchers. I'm going to select Alex Wood. I like getting any of Alex Wood, Alex Cobb, DeSclafani. They just all go so late, and I trust the Giants. They've done great work with pitchers and hitters over the past couple of years. So give me Alex Wood. I think he's like my SP 5 or 6 at this point. So I'm all about it. All right, Sarah, before your next pick, we did have a question in the chat. Someone, Cliff Shelton, throw it up here on the screen for you. He asked, Sarah, I'm a Nico fan. So that's Nico Horner. Will they give him a try? What do you think about Nico Horner and the Cubs this year?
I'm a huge Nico fan too, and I think that Nico's going to get a ton of playing time. The thing is that Nico Horner should be a second baseman. He's got potential as a Gold Glove second baseman. I think the bat is real. I just don't think the power is very good. So I think he's going to be like more of a high average, lots of doubles type of guy. I don't think you're going to see a ton of home runs from him, but the glove is special. He's a very good player. I just think that he would be a below average shortstop and above average second baseman, which is part of why I want the Cubs to get a shortstop. That creates a weird roster crunch, though, because they've also got Nick Madrigal there, and they're going to have to try to figure out how they're going to get Nick Madrigal and Nico Horner playing time. And Frank, I like Nico better than Nick. I'm seeing a lot of ADP where they're pretty close together, but Nick Madrigal's a little higher. I think Nico has a lot higher upside than Nick Madrigal does, but I also think that they're competing for playing time, which puts the Cubs in a weird spot.
All right, and there it is. Frankie 2 hits. Frank Schwindel goes off the board. Sarah, you might be wondering why. Why does he call him Frankie 2 hits? Well, in 55 starts with the Cubs last season, he had multiple hits in 25 of those games. So just 2 hits galore for our buddy here, Frank Schwindel. I say our buddy. The guy has no idea who we are. I have him on in the Scott White Dynasty League, so I'm pretty excited about that. Chris, keepers are due Friday, so make sure you get those in.
Oh, I've already sent my keepers.
Oh, all right, good. I have
I'm ahead of it.
Trying to debate if I want to keep a $9 Tucker Davidson or not. I don't think that I'm
gonna some real tough decisions to be made. No, I've actually I was surprisingly pleased with how I it's one of those things where you go a few months without looking at a team in a dynasty league, and then you go back and you're like, oh, this is pretty good. And it was some of that's thanks to you. We made a trade last year.
Yeah, we made a pretty big one, a blockbuster. So for those who don't know, the Scott White Dynasty League, it's a 24-team head-to-head points dynasty league. So I get like 24 teams. We're going deep into the player pool, and it's like a quasi. There's a draft element with the first-year player draft, but it's mostly auction/salary cap. And you keep players for an increasing salary year over year. I traded you, I think, a $15 Jose Berrios, a $5 Lourdes Gurriel. So I'm pretty valuable players.
And a $20 Joe Musgrove, I believe, right?
No. You had Musgrove already. I think I gave you like Drew Smiley or something like that.
Yeah.
It was Berrios and Lourdes Gurriel. And my team is rebuilding. So you gave me Brett Beatty and Austin Hendrick, who's a prospect with the Reds. You also gave me a $1 Trevor Rogers. So based on the timeline of my team, it just made more sense to like get the young, cheap starting pitcher and load up on the prospects. And obviously you're a little bit more in win now mode. So
I've got Barrios, Musgrove, Sandoval, Stroman as my pitching staff in a 24-team league. That's pretty good.
You have Patrick Sandoval?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
damn.
$2 Patrick Sandoval.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
And a $2 Lucas Sims, who I'm about to draft in this draft. And if I had been on the relief pitcher preview, I would have said that Lucas Sims is my sleeper at relief pitcher.
Oh, Chris. Well, let me introduce you to a gentleman named Art Warren, because that guy is awesome. And I don't know if he's going to be the 7th or 8th inning guy for the Reds this upcoming year. They mix and match a lot at the back end of their bullpen. He had something like a 19% swinging strike rate last year, and he has closing experience in the minors. I agree with you that Lucas Sims will probably be the guy to start. And overall, I like the stuff from Lucas Sims. But if they mix and match and they just try and settle on who has the most dominant stuff, it might actually be Art Warren. So
it might, but Lucas Sims might be really, really good.
He's good. Yeah, the underlying numbers were fantastic.
Yeah, he's got a 325 FIP since the start of the 2020 season. I guess there have been times when they've talked about stretching him out as a starter, but last 2 seasons, 72 and 2/3 innings, 110 strikeouts with a 325 FIP. And the xERA is actually even better because he's been really good at suppressing hard contact. So I think there's a chance Lucas Sims is really, really good as a closer.
All right, well, let's catch people up on the draft because there's a lot going on, and we're just, we're jumping all around. We're having some fun. We're talking some Cubs. We're talking Frankie 2 hits. We're talking about, Reds closers. Who doesn't want to hear about that? Sarah selected Yuli Gurriel. Then we see Jose Urquidy, Michael Pineda. Scotty selects Dylan Floro, someone I believe he mentioned as a sleeper on our relief pitcher preview. Ian Happ goes, then Lucas Sims and Andrew Kittredge. All right, Chris. So you have the 2 elite closers early. Then you get a Paul Sewald that you'll just leave in the lineup all the time, give you the ratios of strikeouts. And then you have 2 kind of closers that, they probably project as the leader for their respective teams. And Lucas Sims and Andrew Kittredge. How do you feel that the strategy with all of your relief pitchers is coming together?
I'm pretty happy with it. This is going to be a team that has a lot of flexibility in the pitching staff. The problem is I've invested a lot in my pitchers. I think I've split my picks pretty evenly at this point. I guess I've got nine pitchers picked out of 19 picks. And so that means that I don't have a bench hitter yet. And I've got guys like Justin Turner, guys like Luis Arias, who, Franmil Reyes and Nelson Cruz, guys who may, for one reason or another, not be everyday players at some point. And so, I'm gonna have to make up for that. But the flexibility that this pitching staff has with, I think 2 aces in Shane Bieber and Zach Wheeler, and then Mike Clevenger and Eduardo Rodriguez as high upside SP3 and 4, and then some really good relievers. I'm really happy with that.
All right. I'm trying to figure out if there are any closers left. I don't think so. I think I missed out on all of them. So, all right. I've got some
Gregory Soto.
Gregory Soto
still out there.
Up there. So we spoke about this on the relief pitcher preview, Chris. There was a comment the day after the season ended where AJ Hinch said, Gregory Soto's our closer. There, go tweet about it. And so he basically had this back and forth going all year with the Detroit press because they would always ask him who's the closer and he would never answer it. And then he said that after the season ended, but then like his following quote was, or maybe we'll use him in the 6th, 7th, or 8th inning.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like take it with a grain of salt. For what it's worth, Michael Fulmer was actually the better pitcher when they were both healthy last year. So I think it's still kind of up in the air. Maybe it's like mix and match depending on who's coming up in the 9th inning. But I actually kind of think like if you're just talking value, Fulmer is going way later. I'd rather just take the shot on Fulmer personally.
And, Ian Kennedy could end up being I think the Marlins have been linked to him at times. So, he could still end up being a closer.
Yeah, there's still a few names out there. Like Brad Boxberger, for example, was fantastic with the Brewers last year. And there might be people scoffing at the idea of Brad Boxberger, but he was good. Like he was really good. I looked his numbers up in the second half today. He was like one of the top 10 relievers in K- walk rate in the second half. So some team that, maybe a rebuilding team, they bring him in for half a season and then they look to flip him at the deadline. Like that's going to happen with him and Ian Kennedy, who you mentioned. So still, we're going to see some things happen here at the back end of some bullpens. All right. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, but in the meantime, let's see what else we had happen here. Kyle Hendricks went, Jesus Aguilar, Cabrian Hayes. Sarah, you selected Garrett Whitlock. I think that's a great selection. And then Julio Rodriguez and Cal Quantrill. So Garrett Whitlock, he's in this limbo right now where he could be the Red Sox closer. I think he's talented enough. Rule 5 draft pick last year by the Red Sox. They stole him from the Yankees. So shout out to the Red Sox for doing that. Or Garrett Whitlock could be a starter. Either way, the numbers were really strong from last year. Lots of strikeouts, lots of ground balls. So Sarah, I think either way, you've got a strong pick here in Whitlock. He either starts or he winds up being the closer for the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, he's kind of sparpy, and I like his shots at actually being the closer. I don't think that Matt Barnes is getting that job.
Yeah, Matt Barnes was a disaster in the second half. So I think the Red Sox are a candidate to bring somebody in. I mean, they could use a Kenley Jansen. They could trade for a Craig Kimbrell. If they brought in an Ian Kennedy, would he be their best reliever? Probably not, but he has closing experience, so I think it's possible. We'll see. James Karinchak, that's kind of an interesting pick in this format too, because if he gets back on track, I mean, he has as much strikeout upside as any reliever in baseball. Mm-hmm. It's just, the walks and the whip went completely through the roof last year after the sticky substance crackdown. So
yeah, he's going to be a guy who gives up a lot of walks and a lot of home runs, but I think he can probably figure out how to get the strikeout stuff back. And, I think he'll be better this season.
All right, so I selected David Bednar, and admittedly, I don't know if he's the closer for the Pirates because they got 10 saves after they traded Richard Rodriguez at the deadline last year. 7 of those went to Chris Stratton. So as of now, I think Stratton's the leader. But either way, David Bednar is awesome. Lots of strikeouts, really good ratios. So if he's the closer, great. I get saves. If not, I'm just going to leave him in my lineup and get elite ratios. So either way, in round 19, I'm fine with taking David Bednar at this point in the draft. Riley Green, a top prospect in the game, an outfielder for the Tigers goes. He's got some power and speed. And then Steven Strasburg to start round 20. I don't know how many IL spots we have in this league, but if it's more than one, then I am on board with just stashing Strasburg as long as you can and then see if you can get anything at all out of him. I think I still might need do I need another utility bat? No, I don't. All right, so what do I want to do? I think I want to take another reliever. I could take Gregory Soto, but I just went on a long rant about how I don't think he is the closer. So I don't think I'm going to do that. I actually think that Ken Giles is going to be the closer for the Seattle Mariners. So I select him here. I go with 2 relievers. Again, either way, if Ken's going to provide strong ratios, they brought him in for this reason. I think they give him the first shot. And if he performs well, he will remain the closer of the Mariners. Chris, you made a groan when I drafted Giles.
Yeah, no, I was definitely hoping to end up with Ken Giles as another option to potentially provide saves or just to give me a little more flexibility when it comes to those daily pitching spots. So that is, it's a little frustrating for me personally. Wish you wouldn't have done it.
Well, I mean, look, Chris, you've got enough strong relievers, so I think it's all right if I get a few of these guys myself. So
no, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I've got a who's who of Mark Melancon, Corey Knebel, David Bednar, and Ken Giles. Not the greatest group of relievers I've ever put together on a fantasy baseball team. All right, Sarah, I know your pick is coming up here, so after you make that pick, I want to ask you about Kyle Hendricks because he was quite bad in the second half last year, and I want to find out whether or not you think that he will bounce back with, that really good defense behind him there in Chicago. After I selected Ken Giles, we see Chad Green go. He's another one of those Devin Williams, Paul Sewald types that should give you strong ratios and strikeouts. Maybe even pick up a few saves when Aroldis Chapman is struggling. Mitch Garver in round 20, pick 232. I mean, if you wait at catcher, that's great. It's just great value on Mitch Garver. So someone that I would not mind scooping up if I waited this long.
100%.
My catcher. A few guys went in last round that I thought were interesting as well. Mitch Keller. Chris, have you seen these videos of Mitch Keller throwing like 103 miles per hour? And now people are like kind of making Mitch Keller a thing again. I have gone down the Keller route so many times. Like, I think even last year, Chris, we do the to stream or not to stream at the end of every podcast. And I would bring up Mitch Keller and like whatever good matchup he had. And we're just like, nah, we can't actually pitch Mitch Keller, right? And it turned out to be a good thing that we didn't.
Yeah, I don't think the issue for Mitch Keller is an inability to throw the ball hard when he's going max effort. I don't think that's been the issue for him in the majors. I mean, the fastball certainly hasn't been great for him. So if he can bump it up from 94 to 96 or something, that certainly makes him more interesting. The problem is he doesn't really have secondaries. He's got a pretty good slider, but his curveball and the rare changeups that he throws have just not been good. The curveball had a 12.8% whiff rate last season, 13% in 2020, and a 425 expected WOBA allowed.
Yikes.
That's really, really bad. That basically means that every time he throws a curveball and someone makes contact with it, that person's Mike Trout. That's not what you want. So, yeah, I don't know. If he comes out and either starts throwing the slider like 35% of the time or has a changeup that, takes a step forward, then I can, be a little interested in. But I don't think Mitch Keller's issue is that when he's trying to throw hard, he can't throw that hard. I think that it's the rest of the arsenal is as much of an issue as everything, as the fastball, certainly.
All right, we've got 117 people watching. We have 85 likes, so we're 15 likes away from our goal here. We want to hit 100 by the end of this draft, so we're coming up here on the end of it. So if you can help us out, you need 15 more likes. So again, like this video, smash the like button if you haven't already. And I'll quickly pull up one of these comments here on YouTube from Ozzy. Is there even going to be a season? Yes, Ozzy. I know it looks bleak right now, but at least the two sides are meeting, the players and the owners, and they're going to meet again on Wednesday. I know there hasn't been much progress to this point, but the fact that they're meeting, I think, is positive. There will be a season. Is there a chance it's delayed? Look, if they don't figure this out by the end of February, I think there's a good chance that, we start talking about like the middle of April as a starting point, but we're not at that point yet.
And I don't think we're going to lose games. Like, I think we're going to get a full 162, wherever the season starts. I'm pretty confident in that.
Chris, you selected Josh Young, and I'm seeing in the chat, ouch, that shoulder, Chris. So just in case you missed it, Josh Young messed up his shoulder last weekend.
I did miss that. Okay.
Yeah, so,
that's not ideal.
They didn't give a timetable or anything, but it doesn't sound great. Sarah, I wanted to ask you quickly about Kyle Hendricks. He had an ERA over 6 in the second half after years and years of outperforming his peripheral numbers. Do you believe that Kyle Hendricks will get back on track?
Yeah, I think Kyle Hendricks is all right. I watch a lot of him. The thing that happened with Kyle Hendricks last year is he had more of a home run problem than he's ever had. It's weird. He managed to avoid high home run per fly ball rates through all of the crazy ball seasons, through 2019, through 2017, through 2015. And then last year, it kind of caught up with him. I think that some of that probably has to do with he was missing his spots more than he normally does. And I don't know if he was dealing with some injury or other things that were going on, but he still looks like he's going to be the same guy to me. I don't think that his pitches have changed substantially. The other thing I've been thinking about a lot with him is, I don't think that having two different baseballs helped him a lot. He's a changeup specialist. And I think that it was one of those situations where the pitcher, he is so dependent on pristine and precise location that if he is going into situations where there are two slightly different baseballs game after game, I think that probably impacted him more than it would have impacted some other people. I actually think that's also what was behind some of Luis Castillo's struggles, because he's also a similar type of pitcher. Changeup specialist, really gets by on some of his location. And I just think that caught up with both of them.
All right, Sarah, I completely messed you up. You have 5 seconds left to pick, so I apologize for that. There you go.
That's okay. I've got my cue set. It's fine.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Scott, he restart your clock there. So
that's sweet of Scott. Thank you, Scott.
That's my bad, though. I shouldn't have asked you the Kyle Hendricks question as we were approaching you being on the clock. But I think a lot of what you said.
You're good. I knew who I wanted next.
Yeah. All right. Sixto Sanchez. So Sixto Sanchez, we mentioned the shoulder with Josh Young. Sixto dealing with a bit of a shoulder issue himself. We'll see when he can get back on the mound here for the Marlins. But I think the upside still remains pretty high for one Sixto Sanchez. A few other picks here in this range. Scott selected O'Neal Cruz earlier. We mentioned him as a potential breakout candidate a couple of weeks back. And some pitchers I like going in this range: John Gray, Josiah Gray. There was somebody else the last round. Yeah, Scott selected Zach Greinke. So, yeah, we're starting to see some upside pitchers. Jesus Luzardo, I like the opportunity for him bouncing back this season as well. So this is the part of the draft where, you want to take some swings on some upside starting pitchers. Why not in round 21? I think that makes a lot of sense. And I love your explanation for Kyle Hendricks, by the way, Sarah, because, it seemed like he was just missing his spots last year. I mean, he's someone who, when you throw 86, 87, having that kind of command is just so important. So if he was off even in the slightest last year, and look, he's getting up there in age. I mean, there's a chance that he's just starting to lose some of that command. But if he can get it back, then, we're looking at someone who's going as late as he is now. He's around 17 or 18 pick. And last year he was a top 75 player being drafted. So it kind of seems like a no brainer to just take the shot and see what happens.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing where there seems to be, with his style of pitching, there's going to be a relatively thin margin for error, because he does have to rely so much on being arguably the best in baseball at limiting quality of contact and limiting hard contact. He's just so good at that it helps make up for the lack of strikeouts. And when that's your approach, and when you don't have necessarily overpowering stuff, I think it's the kind of thing where if you just miss a little bit, it can hurt you more and it can compound itself. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he can't get back to being the guy he was.
Yeah, and the other element I throw in there, you mentioned age. I think that pitchers who are fireballers age worse than pitchers who throw 86, 88. I mean, if you look at the guys who have, I think of like Dan Herron, like I throw 88, like those guys aged really well. They're command artists and they know how to pitch. And that's why Kyle Hendricks is the guy. I think he's better in innings pitched quality start league because he is the guy who nails that, right? Like he's the dude who you expect to get a quality start, but I still think he's a great pitcher and I think he'll be better than he was last season.
All right. Let's see what else is going on here in the draft. We're coming up on the last couple of rounds. Josh Stallmont went. He's another one that could provide some really strong ratios. I selected Aaron Ashby. He's very much so in that Tanner Houck type of mold where I don't know exactly what he's going to do for the Brewers, but when he does it, I think he's going to be pretty damn good at whatever he's doing. So lots of strikeouts, awesome slider from the left-hand side, big prospect arm for the Brewers. I like Aaron Ashby quite a bit. Oh, Spencer Torkelson went. So, all right, Tim, you got me back. You wrote in the chat that I sniped you on Ashby. Torkelson was someone that I was looking at with one of these last picks. Fits the mold of the team. 4-category contributor, lots of pop, really strong plate discipline, OBP. And I think we see Torque by like May or June. We'll see what happens with the CBA and holding players down. Could obviously change things, but yeah, I like Torque quite a bit. You also selected Mike Zunino. I took Jesus Sanchez, Alex Reyes, Jonathan Loaizaga goes, Miles Straw, Tony Gonsolin, and Gene Segura. Sarah, I mean, I'm all about it because like Gene Segura is not a high upside play, but you can plug him in your lineup. He's probably going to hit 280 plus. He's going to give you 15 or so home runs, double-digit steals, and hit near the top of a pretty good lineup. So I know he goes late, might not have the most upside, but I really like Gene Segura at his value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was trying to choose between Tony Gonsolin and Gene Segura, and that choice got made for me because Tony Gonsolin went right before him. So that was good for me.
Yeah, for sure. Make sure, by the way, for anyone watching here live that you follow Sarah. You can see her Twitter handle here up on the screen, but you can follow her at BCB_Sarah. She is the lead voice for Bleed Cubby Blue and the co-host of the Cuppa Cubby Blue podcast. So for any of our Cubs fans, our Cubs contingent out there, if you want some more Cubby content, of course, you can find it here from Sarah. All right. After Gene Segura went, Kyle Lewis, Andrew Heaney, and I assume the sigh that you emitted, Chris, came from the pick of Alex Cobb.
Yep. He was at the top of my queue. Just moved him there. He'd been in my queue for a while, and I was getting ready to take him. You mentioned you want one of those Giants guys. Well, Alex Cobb is one of those Giants guys, and he was, I think, a lot better than his overall numbers indicated. His peripherals were quite good all year, and he's another guy like Kevin Gausman who relies really heavily on. He calls it, I don't know if it's a splitter or a changeup. It's referred to as the thing. And it's this really, really effective secondary pitch when he has it right. And it was working for him last season. And so, the move to San Francisco only makes me more confident that he'll be able to figure that out. So would have really liked Alex Cobb there. I'm a little annoyed by Scott right now.
Yeah, I do wonder if the Giants can really get the best out of a splitter pitcher, though. I don't know. Have they ever been able to?
Yeah, not a lot of track record with that.
It's like they turn these other pitchers around, but a splitter, I don't know. Of course, I'm being facetious. They were amazing with Kevin Gausman the past couple of years, so that's part of the reason why I like Alex Cobb. Of course, why Chris likes Alex Cobb. It really doesn't matter. Like the Giants have just done great work with basically whoever comes in. They got the best out of Anthony DeSclafani last year. Alex Wood, really strong when he was on the mound for them as well. Chris, who do you prefer most between that group? DeSclafani, Alex Cobb, Alex Wood?
I think I have Wood ranked highest, but I could move Cobb ahead of him. I think Cobb might actually be my favorite.
All right. Yeah, I think it's pretty close between those guys. I think they both have a little bit more upside on a per inning basis than DeSclafani, but if you need a little bit more innings, I don't know if you realize, Chris, that you were on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, I was having that problem with my queue where players who were already drafted were showing up on my queue, and so I was like, I clicked on Brendan Rodgers. I think he got drafted several rounds ago.
Nice. Yeah, I was just gonna say about DeSclafani versus the Alexes. I think DeSclafani, his ceiling is not as high, but will probably provide you more innings. Just don't pitch him against the Dodgers. He was like deathly terrible against the Dodgers last year. I think he had an ERA over 10 or something in 4 starts against them. So start DeSclafani against anybody else, not named the Dodgers, and I think you'll do quite well. All right, so Bobby Dahlbeck goes, a ton of power upside. People excited about Dahlbeck, and Scotty sticking to the brand, selecting Connor Joe, who we just spoke about on our outfield preview.
Scott loves some Connor Joe.
That's not how the lyrics go, man. I don't know.
Isn't it? I thought it was.
I think I sent the song to Scott, and the first thing he said was, I thought I liked Connor Joe more than you. So, I don't know. Like, that's where we're at. We're arguing over who likes Connor Joe more so that we can have the lyrics named after us liking Connor Joe. Chris, Andrew Heaney went in the last round, and I know he's Andrew Heaney, but I've been seeing some Andrew Heaney love in the fantasy baseball industry, potentially as this year's, wait for it, Robbie Ray. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but before last season, we basically wrote off Robbie Ray. Like, I don't know that anybody was expecting anything from Robbie Ray. Do you see any similarities there between Andrew Heaney and Robbie Ray?
I don't think Heaney's got the same stuff as Robbie Ray. So, like, I think that's the underlying issue. I don't like. I think Andrew Heaney is not terrible. Like, he gets a decent amount of strikeouts and a decent amount of whiffs. The stuff underneath the numbers suggests that he shouldn't be quite as bad as he usually is. But I think part of the problem with him is he's got a fastball that's like, it's classified sometimes as a sinker, sometimes as a 4-seam fastball. He throws it up in the zone, and he gets a lot of spin on it. And so it's actually a pretty good whiff fastball, but it tends to get hit pretty hard, and he throws it, almost 60% of the time. So I think that's the main issue, is that the fastball's not good enough.
I will say that blindly just having faith in the Dodgers or the Giants for this example, I think makes sense as well. I think that's, perfectly fine, especially, you get Andrew Heaney with one of your last picks. If he stinks for the first couple of weeks, then you drop him, and that's the end of that. But the Dodgers have done a pretty good job getting the most out of their pitchers. The draft is done. We appreciate everyone for sticking around. Still over 100 people watching us here, and we did get up over 100 likes. So thank you very much, everybody, for smashing the like button and helping us out. We do appreciate it quite a bit. And thank you to Sarah for helping us out for this entire draft. Let's quickly go through your team. We'll then look at Chris's, and then we'll wrap this thing up. We've been here for 2 hours. It's quite some time. So I do appreciate you sticking with us here, Sarah. It's been a long draft. All right, so let's take a look at your team. You've got JT Realmuto. You got Ryan Mountcastle, Jonathan India, Chris Bryant, Xander Bogaerts, Starling Marte, Chris Taylor, Kyle Tucker, Brandon Belt, and Jared Walsh in your utility spots. And then for your pitchers, you've got Nathan Eovaldi, Casey Mize, Devin Williams, Garrett Whitlock, Kenley Jansen, Chris Sale, Garrett Cole, Ranger Suarez, and then Brantley, Segura, Nimmo, Yuli Gurriel, Sixto Sanchez on the bench. How do you think you did? Do you like your team here, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I think I wish I would have gotten one more power bat earlier when some of those guys who are like more reliable home runs are on the board, but I think I made up for it. I'm a little bit, I don't love having 2 first basemen in the utility spot, but I'd probably, playing this team, I would probably swap like a Gene Segura or something into one of those spots. I think that having guys like Chris Taylor give me a lot of flexibility for how I want to approach the season, and that's particularly helpful in a daily lineups league. And I really love the pitching staff. Like, I actually was not planning on using my opening pick for a pitcher, but it was sort of my secondary strategy if Jose Ramirez or Vladimir Guerrero Jr. didn't fall to me, and they didn't. So this is the first draft mock I've done this year where I had a pick that was in like the first half, and I took a picture, and I don't hate how it came out.
All right. Yeah. You wound up with Garrett Cole and Sale as your 1 and your 2. You've got Nathan Eovaldi, who I think is very serviceable as a 3 when you have, Garrett Cole as that workhorse up top. Ranger Suarez for some upside. Garrett Whitlock is kind of a swingman. We'll see what he could do. Casey Mize was fine last year. He's got to get the strikeouts up. But the Tigers, look, AJ Hinch did a great job with pitchers. I know he probably doesn't typically just handle pitchers on an everyday basis, but obviously the Astros did great when he was there. So can he get the most out of Casey Mize? I think that there's still a level we haven't seen from Casey Mize. Chris, let's take a look at your team. And you went with the unorthodox strategy of taking 4 pitchers in your first 5 picks, 2 starters and 2 closers. Let's see how the lineup turned out. Dalton Varsho, Jose Abreu, Luis Arias, Justin Turner, Tim Anderson, Christian Yelich, Kyle Schwarber, Fernando Tatis, Nelson Cruz, and Franmil Reyes. So snagging up all the util only bats. I like it. Zach Wheeler, Shane Bieber as your 2 aces. Then Josh Hader, Raisel Iglesias, Lucas Sims, Eduardo Rodriguez, Mike Clevenger, Paul Sewald, Ian Kennedy, AJ Pollock, Ahmed Rosario, Andrew Kittredge, and Josh Young. What do you think about how it came out trying a new strategy?
I'm actually pretty happy with this, specifically in a daily moves league, because, I love the pitching staff. I think that's going to be one that is able to compete every week in every category, and I'm going to have flexibility to move relief pitchers into my lineup when starters aren't going. The starters themselves, it's, not the most reliable group necessarily, especially with Clevenger, Rodriguez, and Bieber making up 3 of the 4 guys. But I think that's okay because there's a ton of upside across the board. And that's kind of the same thing with my offense, is I just think there's upside everywhere. And so, yeah, Christian Yelich, Tim Anderson, Justin Turner, all these guys who people tend to, get frustrated by or scared off of because of injury concerns. Fernando Tatis, you could throw in there as well as my number 1 overall pick. But I think this strategy is perfectly viable, and actually waiting on hitter a little bit in a head-to-head categories league isn't a bad idea, because you can still, when you've got the 2 utility spots, being able to take, Nelson Cruz doesn't just foreclose you from taking another really big bat, whether it's at utility or at another position that you've already filled. So I kind of love this team.
All right. Can you actually see yourself doing it, like in a league that we play out?
Yeah, I mean, my preference is to not play in daily lineup leagues because I don't have the attention span to set my lineup every single day. But I could see that being a viable strategy in a head-to-head categories league if we, when we build one of those. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah. Look, lots of risk involved with the hitters, but you mentioned that throughout the course of the draft. And if those guys hit, then, hey, you're playing for first place, right? So that's the name of the game. For me, I had the 11th overall pick here, and I was punting steals. So I wound up with Yasmani Grandal as my catcher, then Freddie Freeman, DJ LeMahieu, Nolan Arenado, Carlos Correa, Mike Trout, Eddie Rosario, and Teoscar Hernandez in the outfield. My 2 utility bats, Brandon Lau and Eugenio Suarez. I wonder, is the batting average overall too low for the team? DJ LeMahieu brings it up. Obviously, Freeman, Trout. No, it's probably okay. Like, there's some guys, I think it balances out quite well. I mean, there's some guys that bring it down, and obviously some guys that will help bring it back up as well. The starting pitchers, I did not take one until round 4, and I got Aaron Nola as my SP1, and then I got Lance Lynn as my SP2. I also wound up with Dylan Cease, who I believe has a ton of upside. I've got Sean Manaea, who I think could be a breakout this season if he can maintain that velocity. I've got a few closers in Mark Melancon and Corey Knebel, some closer hopefuls in David Bednar and Ken Giles. I've got some swingman type players in Tanner Houck and Aaron Ashby. So a little bit of everything. I think I achieved punting steals. I kind of like the team. I wish I had one better starting pitcher, like one ace up top. Would have been nice to get like Sandy Alcantara, but overall, I like the team, and I think it turned out quite well. we are going to wrap there. For anyone who's still watching here at the 2 hour and 18-minute mark, make sure that you follow Sara on Twitter. Again, that's at BCB_Sara. You can find her work over at Bleed Cubby Blue and the co-host for the Cuppa Cubby Blue podcast. Sara, we appreciate your time. This was a long one, so we really do appreciate it.
No, it was a blast. Thanks for having me. And it was also really fun to play with a head-to-head roto draft. I haven't done a daily head-to-head roto draft this season yet. I did a couple of leagues last year that were like that. But so this was a nice way to practice up on that a little bit. That happens to be my college friends league as a head-to-head roto league. So I want to make sure I get as much practice there as possible. Bragging.
All right. So we're helping you out. You're helping us out. It works both ways. We do appreciate it. And good luck in Tout Wars this year. We'll be rooting for you. Obviously, I'm rooting for my guy, Chris, as well. But rooting for both of you guys to compete and make some noise in Tout Wars this season. For Chris and Sara, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.